Chapter 9:12. Stop. Li Fengqing's voice, which had yet to fade, was still being transmitted to everyone's ears. All they could see was a godly blade descending from the sky, piercing through Li Zhao's body with the momentum of piercing through the blue dome of the heavens. Buzz! A murderous aura filled the air. The power of the death sword pierced through Li Zhao's chest and came out from his back. The entire Xian Kshetra firmament region fell into a deathly silence. Everyone felt as if the sky was covered in dust and the earth was dark. The third elder of the Taiqing sect, this expert, who could be called the #1 figure in the Eastern Victory Prefecture, looked extremely old and helpless at this moment. At this moment, the dignity and viciousness from before had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a thick sense of unwillingness and hatred. He faced the sky. The sound of blood dancing in the wind was especially ethereal. His dim old eyes stared at the young figure, emitting the aura of the god of death in the sky. Full of hatred, Chu Hen's black hair danced in the wind. His demonic eyes emitted an evil light. Like a god or a demon, he controlled the life and death of this firmament region. When he was enraged, blood would flow like a river, and experts would die. No one could have imagined that the third elder of the Taiqing sect would die here. Like a bird with broken wings, Li Zhao's body fell powerlessly, heavily smashing into the rubble below. His flesh was instantly a bloody mess. Rumble! The people of the Taiqing sect felt as if there was a thunderbolt exploding in their heads. They were all extremely frightened. Li Fengqing powerlessly fell to the ground, her eyes lifeless and her body shivering. Since the start of the fight, she had never been so frightened. Demon. Chu Hen was simply a demon. Li Fengqing's mind was blank. At this moment, there was only endless fear left in her. After killing Li Xiao in an earth-shattering manner, Chu Hen's eyes directly shot towards Lei Mingho, who was rushing over. This was an opportunity. Lei Mingho's eyes were resolute, his gaze like a sword. Although Chu Hen had killed the strongest person, the other party had also suffered quite a bit of damage. This was definitely a great opportunity for him to counterattack. After all, Lei Mingho had the bloodline limit of the sacred body. His confidence did not decrease even though Li Xiao had been killed. In his opinion, Li Zhao's death had strengthened his resolve to obtain the profound Kshetra divine lightning's heart. Thank you for getting rid of this big trouble for me. Lei Mingho smiled coldly. Rumble. 10 lightning clones flew out like the phantoms of fiend gods. They swept up the power of tens of thousands of rolling lightning bolts and exploded with a strong killing intent towards Chu Hen. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the aureole behind. Anyone could see that Lei Mingho had really planned this out well. Once Li Xiao was dead, Lei Mingho would use the power of the sacred body of thunder to end today's chaotic situation. It's not a good thing to celebrate too early. Facing the 10 lightning doppelgangers that were approaching menacingly, Chu Hen looked down on them. A cruel and cold smile rose from the corner of his mouth. Then, Chu Hen raised his left hand and pointed his index finger in front of him in a condescending manner. Buzz! Suddenly, the airflow between heaven and earth rotated rapidly, with Chu Hen as the center. A particularly violent rhythm gathered at the tip of his finger. An unending stream of the power of the 7 stars surged out from his body. Chu Hen was just like a bright moon that hung high in the sky. Endless silver, sacred light patterns were like flowing vines, intertwining with each other and concentrating at the tip of his index finger. Bright energy constantly gathered at the tip of his finger. The surrounding space was restless, as if it was about to welcome the power of a god. Dubhe finger. 8 desolation. Buzz! In an instant, an incomparably solid, bright silver light beam burst out from Chu Hen's fingertip. It was as gorgeous as a glimpse of a swan, shining brightly in the sky and shaking the heavens. Lei Mingho's expression changed. Even he could feel a strong sense of threat. Buzz! The silver pillar of light that separated from Chu Hen's fingertip rapidly enlarged, instantly transforming into a majestic divine pillar of heavenly radiance. With the power of the great Tao, it was like a meteor piercing through the galaxy, directly striking towards Lei Mingho and his 10 lightning doppelgangers. Bang, bang, bang. A series of heavy explosions rang out in the void. One after another, the lightning doppelgangers shattered under the impact of the starlight pillar. Dubby Finger, the last level of the 7-star scripture, was also the most powerful move. At this moment, it appeared for the first time in the Xiansha sky region. Boom! It was like an unstoppable divine sword that destroyed all 10 of Lei Mingho's clones in front of everyone's horrified gazes. In the end, it landed on Lei Mingho's body. Bang! The undulating starlight pattern spread out in all directions, and majestic airwaves danced and surged. Lei Mingho's sacred armor that was formed from the power of the Thunder Soul was forcefully broken. His body shook, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he hurriedly flipped backward. Anything else? Lei Mingho was furious. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with one hand and roared with a ferocious gaze. You think you can kill me with that little ability of yours? Shock and fury. One had to admit that this was the most difficult opponent Lei Mingho had encountered in the past 20 years. Buzz. At the same time, Lei Jixin, who was on the other side, suddenly raised her hand and flipped it. A dark blue silk pouch appeared in her palm. The craftsmanship of the pouch was very luxurious and exquisite. Then, Lei Jixin waved her hand, and the pouch flew above Chu Hen, bursting with a blue radiance like the sun. Buzz. A shocking power gushed out from above Chu Hen, and the blue pouch rapidly expanded, turning into a huge cosmos sack that could contain anything in the blink of an eye. Then, the opening of the cosmos sack faced downwards, and the rope was untied. It erupted with the power to summon the wind and summon the rain, and swallow the mountains and rivers. This cosmos sack was the treasure that Lei Jixin had used to collect the Great Tao divine stone fragments at the Great Tao Cliff. Immediately, an extremely powerful suction force erupted from the cosmos sack, and the airflow between heaven and earth rushed into it. Chu Hen, who was directly below the opening of the pouch, was like a small boat drawn into a storm whirlpool, and he was instantly sucked in. Success! Seeing this scene, the eyes of everyone from the Thunder Saint Palace lit up. Oomph! A proud sneer appeared on Lei Jixin's face. Then she clenched her fist, and the rope at the opening of the cosmos sack quickly closed. But just as Lei Jixin ordered the cosmos sack to turn back into a pouch, a rapidly rising force directly caused the interior of the cosmos sack to swell. What? Everyone's hearts, which had just calmed down a little, became suspended again. Even this couldn't suppress the other party. Buzz. The cosmos sack grew larger and larger. Its interior was constantly filled with manic energy. Lei Jixin constantly released powerful true inner force, trying to forcibly suppress it. But in less than 10 seconds, there was a deafening bang, and the 9 heavens fell into darkness. The monstrous purple flames directly set off an endless sea of fire. Everyone turned pale with fright. The extremely shocking scene was like an ancient fierce beast breaking through a 1,000-year seal, tearing apart the heavenly net, breaking free from its shackles, and rushing out of the magma of hell. The cosmos sack was smashed to pieces. A purple rain of fire danced in the sky, blotting out the sky and covering the earth, and exploding in all directions. Boom! Then, in the midst of the dancing purple flames, a huge black stone tablet the size of a mountain smashed heavily into the ruins of the sky-reaching platform below. It was peerless and magnificent, and the ancient inscriptions and numbers engraved on the tablet exuded a mysterious and ancient aura. That is, a fragment of the divine stone of the Great Path. Oh my God! The wind howled, and Chu Hen stood proudly at the top of the ancient stone tablet, like a king overlooking the world. Damn it! Lei Jixin's eyes turned cold, and the bloodline power of the sacred body of thunder was released without reservation. Countless lightning patterns surrounded her body, and a thick aura of destruction crushed towards Chu Hen. Kill him. Yes. The Thunder Saint Palace experts naturally understood Lei Jixin's meaning, and without the slightest hesitation, each of them burst out with the power of thunder and rushed towards Chu Hen. He's at the end of his rope. Don't be afraid of him. Those who offend my Thunder Saint Palace die. Kill. The momentum was fierce, and thunder and lightning crisscrossed between heaven and earth. Several people launched fierce attacks towards Chu Hen on the stone tablet from different directions. Chu Hen didn't even bat an eyelid as he waved his hand. Buzz! A circle of condensed black ripples instantly swept out in all directions with him as the center. Bang, bang, bang. The powerful shock waves swept over the Thunder Saint Palace experts, and each of them felt as if they had been hit by a boulder. Their internal organs were displaced, and they were sent flying one after another. They couldn't even get close to Chu Hen's body. Clang! However, almost at the same time, Lei Jixin's bloodline power was released to its strongest state. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts descended from the sky, and they gathered towards Lei Jixin. Chi-chi! The manic momentum was shocking, and Lei Jixin's entire body was shrouded in a monstrous lightning. She coldly stared at Chu Hen. I'll let you know how strong the power of the sacred body's bloodline is. Boom! Along with her voice, Lei Jixin actually fused with the lightning. Then, she turned into a shocking lightning pillar that pierced through the Milky Way and shot towards Chu Hen. Heaven and earth flashed, shaking the 9 heavens. Countless lightning nets appeared above Chu Hen's head, and a thick aura of destruction directly enveloped him. The lightning bolt that Lei Jixin had transformed into was like a silver dragon that came from beyond the heavens. Below it, Chu Hen was tiny and weak. The majestic and terrifying world extinguishing divine lightning poured down without any obstruction, and all of its power bombarded the tiny figure on the stone tablet. Boom! The mountains and rivers changed color, and the winds and clouds surged. Hundreds of millions of dazzling lightning bolts spread out from the top of the great path divine stone. Sparks flew everywhere, and light rained down. The vast space fell into an extremely distorted state, as if it would be torn apart at any time. The scene that followed caused everyone to widen their eyes in shock, including Lei Xiaolan, Lei Mingho, and the others. Everyone's pupils trembled, and their faces paled. That's it, Miss Lei. A voice full of mockery, contempt, and ridicule pierced everyone's eardrums. On the top of the ancient stone tablet, a powerful hand firmly gripped Lei Jixin's fair neck. The latter's feet were off the ground, and her line of sight was at the same level as a pair of cold and demonic purple eyes. This is the capital that you're so proud of? Humph! The sacred body of thunder can't even withstand a single blow. Can't even withstand a single blow. Rumble. The impact of these 4 words seemed to make everyone's soul tremble. An extreme sense of defeat filled Lei Jixin's heart and body. The man in front of her suddenly made her feel great fear, especially that pair of strange purple eyes, which made her feel as if she was looking at a demon god. The aura of the sacred body of thunder was completely suppressed to the point that it could not move. Purple light surged around Chu Hen, and behind him there was a blurry black shadow. The arm of the black shadow overlapped with the arm of Chu Hen's original body, forming a double power that held Lei Jixin in his hands. Let her go, Lei Mingho shouted fiercely. Chu Hen did not even look at Lei Mingho. His eyes were still filled with mockery as he stared at Lei Jixin's increasingly pale and beautiful face. Tell me, what should I do with you? Miss Lei, if you have the ability to kill me. Trash, trash. Even if you kill me, you're still a lowly ant. Lei Jixin was unyielding and mocked coldly. Very well. Chu Hen lifted his gaze slightly and nodded slightly. The chill on his body was as cold as a frostblade. You keep saying that I'm lowly, that I'm trash, that I'm an ant. Then today, I'll trample on your dignity and crush your arrogance. I'll make you never forget today's humiliation. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Hen pulled Lei Jixin into his arms and sealed her red lips with his. Boom! It was like a bolt from the blue, and it was even more humiliating. Lei Jixin's expression changed drastically. Her heart was filled with shock, and an extreme humiliation directly smashed her supreme arrogance and nobility. It was a cold, dry kiss, without a shred of emotion. No one thought that Chu Hen would retaliate against Lei Jixin in such a way. Everyone in the Xiankshetra firmament region trembled in shock. Lei Jixin was even more furious. She struggled with all her might, but Chu Hen's arm was like steel, rendering her immobile. In her rage, she bit Chu Hen's lips. Blood flowed out, and it tasted cold and salty. Lei Jixin, who had never suffered such humiliation, immediately burst into tears. Her dignity, her nobility, and her arrogance were all completely crushed by Chu Hen. Just as the other party had said, "Since you see me as lowly grass, I'll make you never forget today's humiliation. Bastard, let her go." On the other side, Lei Mingho was furious. His eyes were scarlet as he charged at the two like an enraged beast. Chu Hen pushed away Lei Jixin's tear-stained face with a palm and laughed at the sky. His laughter was full of mockery. Miss Lei's body is indeed extraordinary. Hearing this, Lei Mingho's murderous, intense sword. Countless violent lightning bolts covered his entire body. He raised his sword and went straight for Chu Hen's life. "I'm going to tear you into pieces." Humph. Chu Hen glanced to the side, and two rays of cold light shot out. "You said you wanted to test my sword. Then you better open your eyes and watch." Victorious East States #1 genius. His tone was as cold as ice. Endless sharp sword aura erupted from Chu Hen's body without reservation. Swoosh! In the next instant, Chu Hen suddenly disappeared from where he stood. The murderous aura of death that filled the sky and covered the earth completely sealed Lei Mingho in a fixed space. One sword flying immortal. The last move of the one sword flying immortal technique. In an instant, Lei Mingho's pupils shrank violently. A dozen sharp humanoid sword auras suddenly flashed in front of him. No, Lei Xiaolan, who was at the back, was horrified, and her face turned pale. In the next instant, a dozen humanoid sword auras flew past Lei Mingho's body like phantoms. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Lei Mingho's body was immediately frozen on the spot. Every humanoid sword aura flashed past his body without any resistance. Fear filled his entire face, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as his body trembled. Chapter 9:13. Flying Immortal Sword. The final move of Mount Kunliu's most powerful technique. No, amidst Lei Xiaolan's cries that were filled with endless pleading and fear, a dozen or so extremely sharp humanoid sword chis pierced through Lei Mingho's body like phantoms. When the last human-shaped sword aura streaked across the horizon, it transformed into Chu Hen's cold and detached figure. Asterisk bang. Asterisk instantly, blood danced in the air as killing intent filled the air. Under countless gazes that were filled with fear and trembling, Lei Mingho's body was directly split into pieces. Exploding from within, severed limbs flew everywhere, and the scene of fresh blood was a ghastly sight. An unprecedented fear and unwillingness completely froze on that twisted face. The #1 genius of Thunder Saint Palace, a monster that only appeared once in 1,000 years in the Eastern Victory Province, was killed by this nameless young man in front of him with a single strike of his sword. Whoosh! The sky darkened, and dust filled the air. In an instant, the entire Xiankshetra firmament region seemed to darken. Big Brother Mingho, Lei Xiaolan's heart-wrenching screams pierced everyone's eardrums. Fear, anger, and regret. All sorts of emotions surged into her heart. At this moment, she seemed to understand how foolish it was for Lei Jixin to offend Chu Hen. High and mighty, one of the 3 pillars of the province, all of the dignity and glory of her Thunder Saint Palace had been completely trampled by Chu Hen. This man in front of her was a cold-blooded demon, but who was the one who forced him into this state? In the distance outside the battlefield, on a relatively secluded Lingxiao platform, a young man in his 20s and a 13 or 14-year-old girl stood together. Their faces were filled with indescribable shock and complexity. These two were none other than Han Ichuan of the Jihua Palace and Xiao Xiaowan of the Thousand World Sect. No one knew when they had arrived. No one had discovered that they had been hiding here all along. It really feels like a goddamn dream. Lei Mingho died just like that, Han Ichuan said as he shook his head. Girl, are you sure what you saw is the same as what I saw? Are we under an illusion? Xiao Xiaowan fell into silence. If she could, she hoped that this was just an illusion. Han Ichuan let out a long sigh. Then, he raised his head and looked at the sky. He mumbled to himself, I'm afraid the victorious Dongzhou is going to change. Big brother Mingho, overwhelmed by anger, Lei Xiaolan, who was already heavily injured, vomited a mouthful of blood. Soon after, her vision darkened as she fainted from Lei Mingho's miserable fate. You actually killed him. Lei Jixin, whose face was covered in tears, felt her mind go blank. From Chu Hen's humiliation to Lei Mingho's death, Lei Jixin suddenly had an illusion that it was a lifetime ago. Everything in the world became abnormally blurry, and the only thing that could be seen clearly was that cold, demon-like figure in front of her. You actually killed him? You actually killed him. Lei Jixin kept repeating this sentence. Then, her eyes were filled with intense hatred. She raised her sword and charged at Chu Hen. She had already lost all reason. Chu Hen's figure moved to the side. His eyes lifted, and a heart-palpitating aura was immediately released from his demonic purple eyes. In that instant, Lei Jixin felt as if she had fallen into an endless abyss. The world spun around her, and her consciousness seemed to be dragged by an invisible giant hand into a bottomless swamp. Immediately after, Lei Jixin saw the most terrifying scene in her life. Rivers of blood, mountains of corpses. This was the Lightning Saint Palace. The beautiful and prosperous land had been reduced to an Azura hell. The entire sect was bathed in blood, and everyone that Lei Jixin was familiar with lay in a pool of blood, and in that blood-red void, Lei Mingho's body was sliced into pieces by the ice-cold and merciless humanoid sword Qi. He let out an incomparably miserable howl. From top to bottom, everyone in the Lightning Saint Palace was slaughtered without exception. The miserable scene continuously attacked the depths of Lei Jixin's soul. No, don't. The scene in front of her was truly terrifying. Lei Jixin's mental defenses were directly broken, and all the hatred instantly turned into fear. Miss Lei, a cold voice invaded Lei Jixin's mind from all directions. As you wish, the Lightning Saint Palace will be the same as what you see in front of you in the near future. No. Lei Jixin's voice was filled with endless fear, and it seemed to reverberate throughout the entire Xian chakra firmament region. Everyone's heart trembled. In the next instant, they saw Lei Jixin kneel in front of Chu Hen powerlessly. Her lifeless eyes were filled with tears, and her beautiful face was filled with pleading and fear, shock. Even more shock. In that short moment, what did Chu Hen do to Lei Jixin? How did he make her break down like this? If Chu Hen's humiliation caused Lei Jixin to have a shred of dignity due to her anger, then now, all of her arrogance and pride had completely collapsed. It was hard to imagine that the most arrogant woman in the victorious East State was conquered by Chu Hen to the point where she couldn't even lift her head. Kill me. Lingering in pain, Lei Jixin felt that death was better than life. The corner of Chu Hen's mouth curled into an extremely mocking smile. You're so arrogant, but right now, you don't even have the qualifications to die by my hands. I will let you personally witness the day when the Thunder Saint Palace that you're so proud of is flattened by me. Hua. It was an incomparably heavy blow of defeat. As arrogant as Lei Jixin was, at this moment, she was not even comparable to a nameless pawn who died in Chu Hen's hands. Today, the trampling and humiliation that Lei Jixin suffered was a nightmare that she could not get rid of for the rest of her life. Bang! A circle of vigorous purple light patterns surged and bloomed in the void. Lei Jixin's powerless body flew out directly and smashed heavily into the collapsed ruins of a high heaven platform. She was motionless, and it was unknown whether she was dead or alive. The entire Xin Chastity region fell into unprecedented chaos. Honesty Valley, Heaven Imperial Court, Taiching Sect, and Lightning Saint Palace were all defeated. Beichuan, Shinto Yitian, Shaolin, Li Xiao, Lei Mingho, they were all massacred by Chu Hen. The blood-red sky was dark, and a shadow of death that filled the sky didn't disappear. Instead, it became even denser. Chu Hen's cold eyes swept across the front, and an evil smile appeared on his lips. Everyone is still here, frivolous and mocking, like the smile of the Grim Reaper. Everyone was terrified to the extreme, and they all regretted staying here. The moment Lei Mingho died, their last trace of hope was completely destroyed. No, don't kill me. I'm begging you. We know we were wrong. Looking at the pleading faces, Chu Hen smiled. It was the smile of a cat playing with a mouse. So what if he was wrong? Could his Meng Chong come back? What if the person who won was Lei Mingho or Li Xiao? What would happen then? If he made the wrong choice, someone would have to bear the responsibility eventually. I'll count to 10. Run as fast as you can. With a frivolous voice, Chu Hen's aura had a soul-piercing coldness. There was no doubt that after the count to 10, what awaited them would be a bloody massacre. Buzz. Without the slightest hesitation, the black mass of people turned and ran. Their speed was many times faster than when they came. Every one of them fought to be the first, revealing the most primitive fear of humanity. Time's up. Everyone. A merciless sentence was issued. Chu Hen's pupils suddenly became deep and dark. He dragged his sword and moved with monstrous killing intent. A merciless flame of revenge quickly spread to every corner of the Xin Chastity region. Chapter 9:14. The mountains were like dragons, and the abysses were tens of thousands of feet high. Numerous enormous ravines stretched across the land and rivers. They were majestic, winding, and rugged, as if they were enormous dragons slumbering between the heavens and the earth. Swish! At this time, a blurred shadow crossed the void. The shadow circled around the surrounding area twice, and then fell on a steep mountain wall. It was a beautiful woman in her 30s, mature and charming. At this moment, her eyebrows were tightly knitted, and her eyes were full of confusion and anxiety as she looked around the mountains and dangerous peaks in all directions. Gong Yangyu, how long are you going to hide from me? Come out now. Her voice was full of uneasiness and anxiety, but more than that, it was full of hidden bitterness. Gong Yangyu, the head of Mount Kunliu, the first martial arts genius to comprehend the unique skill of one sword flying immortal in the past 100 years. At the same time, in the eyes of the world, he was also an extremely irresponsible head of the sect. And this woman was not a stranger. She was Qi Hanyu, the head of Mount Kunliu's flying immortal temple, whom Chu Hen, Lung Lingyan, and Danjin's team have been searching for. Do you want to hide from me for the rest of your life? Qi Hanyu's eyes searched everywhere around her, and her voice full of complaint spread out. I know you're here, Gong Yangyu. You're the worst bastard in the world. Come out now. I've been chasing you for 3 months, and you still won't see me? I know that I was the one who pushed you to become the sect leader, but you can't just leave without saying goodbye. You've been gone for so many years. Have you ever thought about me? Do you know how hard it is for me to live in Mount Kunliu? You bastard. Qi Hanyu had never lost her composure like today. She behaved like an ordinary woman full of hidden bitterness. Almost 20 years. She was sincerely disappointed in Gong Yangyu. However, what made her feel even more disappointed was that during these 3 months, she didn't care about the situation of other people in Mount Kunliu, nor did she meet with most of them. She didn't even know how the battle with the blood-refining hall was. She desperately followed that familiar aura for 3 months. Now, he still refused to see her. All right. At this moment, Qi Hanyu's tone suddenly turned cold, and a white jade sword appeared in her hand. You gave me the sword back then. If you don't come out to see me today, I'll cut my own throat with this sword. Chi Han Yu placed a white jade sword on her neck. There was still no movement in all directions. Chi Han Yu felt helpless, and her eyes were filled with sadness. I'm really disappointed. Gong Yang Yu, I didn't expect you to be so heartless. Since that's the case, let's never meet again. Following that, Chi Han Yu closed her beautiful eyes, and the white jade sword instantly emitted an incomparably sharp aura. With a flick of her wrist, the tip of the sword quickly slashed towards her fair neck. Whoosh. At the critical moment, a condensed sword shadow tore through the air like a ray of light that traced back thousands of years. Ding! The sword aura accurately struck the white jade sword, and the powerful impact caused the sword to fly out of Chi Han Yu's hand. The holy sword landed on the ground, sending up a few grains of sand and stones. Time and space seemed to slow down. This trick again, I really don't know what to do with you. The deep voice contained a sense of vicissitudes, and it was so familiar that it tugged at Chi Han Yu's heartstrings. She slowly opened her eyes, feeling extremely nervous. Her blurry vision gradually became clear. It was a figure that had experienced the vicissitudes of life. His messy hair and beard were a little unkempt, but that pair of deep eyes had an unfathomable majesty. Even though he was wearing coarse hemp clothes, Gong Yang Yu was still Gong Yang Yu. Even though he was dressed like a passerby on the street, he still could not hide the demeanor of a strong cultivator. His eyebrows, his contours, and the vicissitudes of life revealed a dignified bearing. Bastard, bastard. Chi Han Yu's delicate body trembled, and she covered her face with her trembling hands. She could not even stand steadily. She looked at the man in front of her with a complicated gaze, and her heart felt like it was being pricked by needles. She wanted to ask him many questions. For example, why did you hide from me? Why did you leave for so many years? Why didn't you come back? Why did you leave me behind as well? But in the end, she only said one sentence. Bastard, you're simply a big bastard who deserves to be cut into pieces. After accumulating 20 years of resentment, she thought that it would take 3 days and 3 nights for her to finish saying 1,000 words. But when the two of them stood in front of each other, Chi Han Yu could not vent it no matter how hard she tried. Time passes quickly, and time passes quickly. Gong Yang Yu laughed bitterly and said, Bastard, you've been calling me that since you were 20 years old. You're a bastard. Chi Han Yu resisted the tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, I used to be a little bastard, but now I'm an old bastard. I'm sorry you... When she heard those 2 words, all the grievances that Chi Han Yu had endured in her heart over the past few years gushed out like an uncontrollable flood. Her eyes unconsciously reddened, and all the hatred in her heart disappeared without a trace in an instant. All that was left was endless sorrow and grievance. Her voice was a little hoarse. Will you only be willing to see me when I use my life to threaten you? Didn't you use this trick in the past? When we were young, you even lied to me and said that I liked you before I was willing to put down my sword. Gong Yang Yu said helplessly. Seeing his depressed look, Chi Han Yu did not know whether to be angry or amused. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. Gong Yang Yu knew that Chi Han Yu was pretending to lure him out and that she did not really want to commit suicide. Even so, she still came out, because he did not dare to take the risk. He was afraid that there was a 1 in 10,000 chance that Chi Han Yu would really hurt him. Although this possibility was not high, Gong Yang Yu still appeared. There was no sweet talk between a young man and a woman after a long separation. But between the words and the look in her eyes, it was enough to explain everything. Chi Han Yu slightly calmed her restless emotions, then raised her voice and asked, Then what's next? Are you going to continue to dump me? Or are you going to follow me back to Mount Kunliu? Gong Yang Yu was just about to answer when his expression suddenly changed. Chi Han Yu's heart also jumped, and she followed his gaze and looked in the same direction. In the distant sky, there was a faint blood aura surging. The sky was dark, and a fishy wind blew, emitting a frightening, evil aura. That is, in the direction of the Xian Kshetra firmament region. Chi Han Yu said uncertainly. Gong Yang Yu frowned, and his eyes were filled with a grave expression. What a frightening, evil aura. Just who is it? Chapter 9:15. What's going on inside? Why is there such a strong, evil aura? It's scary. It's as if there's a terrifying demon hiding inside. What should we do? Senior Sister Lung, Senior Sister Long. Should we go in and check first or wait for the Demon Slayer Temple Master? Clouds and mist lingered in the air, magnificent. A gate that looked like the legendary Immortal Palace stood under the sky. Behind the gate was the majestic high firmament terrace. This was the entrance to the Xian Kshetra realm. As long as they passed through the gate, they would enter the most dangerous death-forbidden area in the ancient desolate heaven realm. At this moment, Lung Lingyan, Dan Jun, Mu Feng, and Haozi led the team from Mount Kunliu, the team from the mysterious ice sect, led by Long Xuan, and the team from Heavenly Bamboo Peak, led by Lin Yuman, had also arrived. After the battle at the Great Dao Cliff, the team from Mount Kunliu and the mysterious ice sect had retreated at top speed and encountered the team from Heavenly Bamboo Peak. With Lin Yuman's help, they had all recovered from their injuries. Now they had come to the Xian Kshetra sky region together. However, before he entered the Xian Kshetra firmament domain, he was shocked by the monstrous evil chi coming from it. Since they didn't know what was going on inside, and most of the forces that had conflicts with them, such as the Thunder Saint Palace, the Heaven Supreme Dynasty, the Wuwang Valley, and the Taiching sect, they couldn't make a decision. Squeak, 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 squeak. At this time, a little golden-furred monkey that was less than half a meter tall was jumping around on Rat's shoulder. It waved its furry little hands, and its big round eyes were filled with a bright light. What are you shouting for? Can't you speak human language? Mu Feng glanced at the monkey. Squeak, squeak. The monkey showed a disdainful look and made a face at Mu Feng. Aya, how dare you look down on me? Don't transform if you dare. I can kill you with my sword. All right, stop arguing, you two. I just want to find Big Brother Chu Hen now. Yi Yao bit her red lips, her voice filled with unconcealable worry and anxiety. Mu Feng chuckled embarrassedly and said, I'm just trying to lighten up the atmosphere when I see everyone's serious face. Everyone shook their heads helplessly. At the mention of Chu Hen, everyone's mood became even heavier. There had been no news for more than a month, and even Luo Mengchong, who had gone to look for him, had gone missing. No one knew what was going on between the two of them. You man, thank you very much for your help these past few days. Why don't we split up? Lung Lingyan said seriously after thinking for a while. Lin Yuman raised her eyebrows and replied, Aren't you guys going in? Lung Lingyan shook her head and glanced at Long Xuan. Our most important task now is to find Chu Hen. Senior Sister Lingyan, could Chu Hen be inside with Miss Mengchong? Dan Jun voiced out his confusion. As soon as he said that, everyone was startled. Lung Lingyan did not dare to confirm it. Instead, she looked at Long Xuan, Yi Yao, and Haozi, who were most familiar with Chu Hen. Long Xuan's eyes narrowed as she fell into deep thought. Even though she had grown up with Chu Hen, she could not fully understand what he was thinking. If it was for the heart of the mysterious killer lightning, Chu Hen might try to take the risk. If Luo Mengchong was by his side, it would be hard to say. After all, the Thunder Saint Palace, the Taiching sect, the Innocence Valley, the Heaven's Unity Dynasty, and many other powerful forces all wanted to share the profound killer divine lightning heart. In front of so many powerful enemies, Chu Hen would not appear for Luo Mengchong. Therefore, Long Xuan could not be sure. Someone's coming out, Dan Jun suddenly said. As expected, in the next moment, a few scattered figures were rushing out of the door in extreme speed. When they looked over, they saw that all of them were pale and in a sorry state. Their eyes were filled with fear, as if they had seen the most terrifying thing in the world. Isn't that Gu Yongzhan from the Wind and Cloud Pavilion? Gu Yongzhan? In an instant, the people from the mysterious ice sect on Mount Kunliu revealed a cold expression. However, to their surprise, Gu Yongzhan's body trembled when he saw them. Not only did he not show any hostility, but he ran even faster. He did not even look back as he disappeared into the sky with the others in a panic. What was going on? The people from the mysterious ice sect on Mount Kunliu looked at each other. Even the people from the Sky Bamboo Peak were confused. Isn't the Wind and Cloud Pavilion a very powerful sect? Why did he look like he saw a ghost when he saw us? Mu Feng sniffed and looked shocked. "The guy seems to be scared out of his wits?" Hua Shui added. "No way. Even Lei Mingho can't scare Gu Yongzhan out of his wits. Looks like something really terrifying has happened inside. We should retreat quickly." "That's right. The heart of the mysterious killer thunder is not something we can imagine. Let's retreat." If the crowd was still hesitant before, then when they saw Gu Yongzhan of the Wind and Cloud Pavilion running for his life, fear finally suppressed their curiosity. Lin Yumin did not plan to bring people inside. After all, the Sky Bamboo Peak was ranked lower than the Wind and Cloud Pavilion among the top 10 forces. In an instant, the huge gate of heaven in front of them felt like a gate to hell that led to death. Dark and gloomy, especially the dense, blood-red glow that gathered in the sky above. It was like a demonic fog that would not dissipate for thousands of years. It was strange and evil, but it was filled with a chill that made people tremble. Senior Sister Lingyan. Just as everyone was about to retreat, Nongqi, who had the strongest perception, suddenly called out to Lung Lingyan. Everyone looked at her subconsciously. "What's wrong?" Lung Lingyan asked. Nongqi seemed to be a little hesitant, but she was even more doubtful and unsure. She swept her eyes across everyone's puzzled gaze, clenched her fists, then loosened them, and said, "I seem to have sensed Chu Hen's aura." "Really? That's great. Why didn't you say so earlier?" The sudden good news made everyone's eyes light up. They were pleasantly surprised. Yao went forward and pulled on Nongqi's sleeve. She asked impatiently, "Where is Brother Chu Hen?" However, Nongqi's next sentence was like a bucket of cold water poured over everyone. "Chu Hen's aura makes me feel fear. Fear, clear and forceful." When these two words came out of Nongqi's mouth, everyone was surprised. Long Xuanchuang frowned. "What do you mean?" Chapter 9:16. The culprit is Chu Hen. The moment he said those words, Long Xuanchuang, Lung Lingyan, Lin Yumin, Mu Feng, Haozi, and the rest of the people present all turned pale with fright. It was like a bolt from the blue, exploding in everyone's ears. Just a moment ago, there were still many living auras in the Xian Kshetra realm, but now almost all of them had disappeared, slaughtered. Evil qi filled the sky. Even standing outside the Xian Kshetra realm, they could feel the fear from the bottom of their souls. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Brother Chu Hen wouldn't do that. Yao shook her head. She didn't even dare to imagine what was going on inside. "Let's wait for them," Lin Yumin said in a deep voice. However, as soon as she said that, Yao and Long Xuanchuang flew out at the same time and flashed towards the majestic gate of heaven. Haozi followed them. "Got it." Mu Feng and Haozi didn't hesitate and quickly followed the two girls. Squeak, squeak. The little monkey jumped and clapped, as if it was saying that everyone understood its warning. "Let's go." Lung Lingyan led the people of Mount Kunliu and the Ice Sect to follow them. For them, no matter what happened inside, as long as they were sure that Chu Hen was inside, there was no need to hesitate. "Are you all so reckless? Aren't you afraid of death?" A disciple of Sky Bamboo Peak said while shaking his head. Judging from the way Gu Yongzhan and the others fled in panic, it wasn't hard to guess that the situation in the Sky Realm was not simple. If they rushed in recklessly, there might be bloodshed. As the leaders of Mount Kunliu and the Ice Sect, it was impossible that they didn't think of this, seeing everyone's determination. Lin Yumin hesitated for a moment before saying, "Let's go and take a look." "Senior Sister Lin Yu?" "Those who don't want to go can stay." Shortly after, the three groups passed through the gate and entered the Xian Kshetra firmament region. Apart from that, there were also some other people from the major forces who were perplexed by the news. When they entered the Xian Kshetra sky domain, they saw a blood-red world. In the dark sky of the ninth heaven, the Lingxiao platform was dyed red with blood. Corpses were strewn all over the heaven-reaching platforms, and broken limbs were scattered everywhere. Even the clouds floating between the platforms were dyed a dazzling red. Azura Hell, death-forbidden area. The scene before them was the best example of the ancient desolate heaven domain's #1 forbidden death zone. Of course, this restricted area wasn't that restricted area. Everyone who had arrived at this place gasped inwardly. Long Xuan Shuang, Lung Lingyan, Shanjun, Mu Feng, and the others all wore expressions of extreme shock. This was simply an inhumane massacre. As far as the eye could see, there wasn't a single survivor. Could it be that the only survivors were the dozens of survivors who had just escaped? Are they all dead? What about the Tai Ching sex team? I heard even third elderly Xiao is here. A Sky Bamboo Peak disciple said with a trembling voice. Look over there. Along with Hua Shui's exclamation, everyone's gaze swept towards one direction. That was the collapsed ruins of the Ling Xiao platform. Half of a huge demonic beast corpse was lying there. The corpse was cut into two halves, and half of it was gone. That's Lei Jixin's mount, the golden lion Qi. Previously at the Great Dao Cliff, everyone had seen the ferocious giant beast before. Now, the golden lion Qi had died so tragically. Even the Thunder Saint Palace was annihilated. Everyone's mind was filled with endless fear. No wonder Gu Yongzhan from the Wind and Cloud Pavilion was scared out of his wits. It seemed like the severity of the matter had far exceeded everyone's expectations. Big brother Chu Hen. Suddenly, Yao's voice that carried a hint of pleasant surprise caused everyone's hearts to tremble. Everyone's gaze once again shifted to the towering black stone monument in front of them. At the peak of the giant monument, a young figure covered in a bloody glow sat there like a boulder. His features were sharp, charming, and slender. At the same time, it would cause one's heart to palpitate, but at the same time, it would cause one's heart to ache. It's really him. Everyone was shocked and horrified. It was as if a huge wave had been set off in their hearts. The ground was littered with corpses, and the hellish scene of slaughter was really caused by Chu Hen alone. How was this possible? Even though they had seen it with their own eyes, everyone still found it hard to believe. Thunder Saint Palace, Tai Ching Sect, Innocence Valley, Tiantong Dynasty. The teams of these powerful sects were all annihilated? That seems to be Lei Mingho's Thunder Fire Sacred Sword. A Sky Bamboo Peak disciple said with a trembling voice as he pointed at a broken arm that was holding a dark red longsword that seemed to be forged from fire crystals. And that, isn't that the Tai Ching sect's special white robe? Everyone no longer dared to breathe too hard. Even the air was filled with the chilling smell of blood. They were all annihilated. Lei Mingho, Li Xiao, Shinto Yiqian, Shaolin. All of these famous figures of the victorious East State were now scattered among the piles of corpses. It was impossible to tell who was who, and not even a complete body could be found. And all of this was caused by one person. Shock. An indescribable shock. How long had it been since they last met? His strength had already reached such a terrifying level. Chu Hen? Long Xuan Shuang clenched her jade-like hands. Her trembling eyes were filled with many complicated emotions. Why was it like this? What kind of hatred was it? Would it cause Chu Hen to slaughter everyone here until not a single one was left? What did these people do to him? Just at this moment, Chu Hen slowly raised his head. His face that was covered with traces of blood was unexpectedly filled with traces of sorrow. His reddened eyes were filled with heartbreaking sorrow. Meng Chong. His lips moved slightly as he said this name with deep emotion. After the massacre, the sorrow was magnified infinitely. Loneliness, desolation. Before he could say goodbye, the other person had already disappeared in the vast sea of people. The most unbearable thing in the world was to be parted by death without any preparation. In an instant, everyone present was greatly shocked once more, and they looked at each other in disbelief. Miss Meng Chong? Mu Feng frowned and clenched his fists. His eyes were filled with coldness. The others were the same, especially Long Xuan Shuang, Haozi, Hua Shui, and the others. When they were in the 100 Kingdoms state, they knew how deep the relationship between Chu Hen and Luo Mengchong was. Luo Mengchong. Was this the reason why Chu Hen went on a killing spree? Brother Chu Hen. Yao was both sad and distressed. She wanted to fly to Chu Hen's side. However, at this moment, rumble. With an earth-shattering noise, the wind and clouds surged in the sky. Thunder and lightning intersected, and an earth-shattering, violent aura erupted. What's going on? Everyone was shocked. Buzz, a powerful, surging aura gathered in the sky above the Kshetra realm. A storm nebula that was thousands of meters in diameter appeared in the sky and continued to expand in all directions. After that, under the surprised and bewildered gazes of everyone, the center of the vortex actually emanated a myriad of strands of divine radiance. Countless strands of dazzling and resplendent light tainted the sky and penetrated the dark and heavy thunderclouds. Then, an incomparably dazzling circular door slowly opened from middle. The sky and earth lost color, and a miracle opened. The array door was covered with complicated and mysterious ancient numbers. The numbers carved on it were like interweaving silver vines, flashing with mysterious patterns. The scene before them was almost exactly the same as when the ancient desolation heaven realm opened. Buzz, an unparalleled aura spread across the heavens and the earth. Shortly after, a solemn and unquestionable voice resounded through the air. The opening of the ancient desolation heaven realm is about to end. Within 3 days, everyone must evacuate from this passage. If you exceed the time limit, you will be trapped here for 1,000 years. I repeat, the opening of the ancient desolation heaven realm is about to end. Within 3 days, everyone must evacuate from this passage. Otherwise, you will be trapped here for 1,000 years. At the same time, not only the Kshetra realm, but the other regions of the ancient desolation heaven realm also opened their teleportation passages to the outside world. In other words, in 3 days, the ancient desolation heaven realm that opened once every 1,000 years would close. The next time it would close, it would be another 1,000 years. It's over. It came as promised, but it was extremely sudden. When he heard that the ancient desolate heaven domain was about to close, Chu Hen, who was at the top of the giant monument, became extremely unstable. Is it going to end just like that? What about my Ming Chong? Where is she now? What should I do? What should I do? Chu Hen's body trembled uneasily. His eyes were slightly red from anger, and the beast in his heart seemed to have been awakened once again. Unwillingness. Hatred. Hatred. Once again, it exploded uncontrollably. A thick evil aura erupted like a volcano. Chu Hen stood up, and his cold eyes shot into the sky. The flames of slaughter were reignited. He hated it. He hated himself for being so useless that he couldn't even protect the woman he cared about. He hated the people who had hurt her even more. The sea of heaven and earth technique. Buzz. Then, a majestic suction force was released from Chu Hen's True Yuan Violet Palace. The fragment of the great Tao Divine Stone was immediately enveloped in a layer of gentle light. The ancient stone tablet quickly rose into the sky, then turned into a wisp of illusory light and merged into the energy whirlpool in Chu Hen's Dantian. Compared to when he was in the profound world realm, the capacity of Chu Hen's True Yuan Violet Palace had increased by 10 times. Everyone else in the room was even more astonished. At this moment, the aura that Chu Hen emitted was no different from that of a ferocious beast. Big Brother Chu Hen, don't. Chapter 9:17. Rumble. Chu Hen's eyes turned red, and 2 beams of cold light shot into the sky. After absorbing the great Tao Divine Stone fragment into his true essence Violet Palace, Chu Hen turned into a beam of light and flashed toward the divine formation passage that looked like the gate to heaven. Big Brother Chu Hen, wait for me, Yi Yao called out loudly. However, Chu Hen did not seem to hear her and flashed into the passage in the blink of an eye. He immediately disappeared from everyone's sight. No one had expected things to turn out this way. Even though the Kshetra region had turned into a hell filled with corpses, it did not seem to be able to quell the anger in Chu Hen's heart. It seemed like things were not over yet. Swoosh! At this moment, 2 dazzling and condensed beams of light descended from the sky. Then, they transformed into 2 figures with extraordinary auras and arrived at this place. One of them had a very familiar aura. Lung Lingyan, Shan Zhen, and the rest of the people from Mount Kunliu were shocked at first, but then joy appeared on their faces. Flying Celestial Temple Master, Everyone hurriedly jogged forward. She had been missing for so long, and they finally found her. When they saw the middle-aged man standing next to Chi Han Yu, they were even more stunned. The other party's clothes were ordinary and slightly sloppy, but the temperament he exuded gave off a subduing and aloof demeanor, especially those deep eyes, which made people involuntarily feel reverence. Sect Master Lung Lingyan was dumbfounded on the spot. Shan Zhen, Su Lang, Fu Qin, Nong Qi, Hua Shui, and the other disciples of Mount Kunliu were also stunned. Even though some of them had never seen Gong Yangyu's true appearance, the shock in their hearts was not any less. The man in front of them was the supreme leader of Mount Kunliu, whom they had left for 20 years. No wonder Chi Han Yu had disappeared for a few months, and she did not even stop to greet them when she met them halfway. This was the main reason. Greetings, Sect Master. After recovering from their shock, all the Mount Kunliu disciples knelt down on one knee, their faces filled with respect and reverence. If it wasn't today, they would all be very happy. On the other side, Lin Yuman of Heavenly Bamboo Peak also led her people forward and bowed. Heavenly Bamboo Peak's Lin Yuman greets Sect Leader Gong Yang. I have long heard of Sect Leader Gong Yang's great name. It is my honor to meet you today. Lin Yuman's attitude was sincere, not polite words. Everyone knew that the reason why Mount Kunliu was famous was because of Gong Yangyu. Although the overall strength of this sect could not be ranked within the top 10 factions of the Eastern Victory region, Gong Yangyu's strength was definitely able to be ranked within the top 10. Even the sect master of Sky Bamboo Peak had to give Gong Yangyu some face, not to mention a mere disciple. Get up. Gong Yangyu's expression was solemn. His gaze swept across the miserable scene in front of him, and his eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Sect leader, please help Chu Hen. Hua Shui's voice was filled with anxiety. Hearing this, Long Xuan, Mu Feng, Haozi, and the rest, who were at a loss, also looked over. However, compared to the rest, Gong Yangyu's emotions were more chaotic. From a guest's point of view, everything that had happened today was caused by him. If he had not handed the position of Mount Kunliu sect leader and the blue Rand sword to Chu Hen, perhaps Chu Hen would not have come to the Eastern Victory region. Fate. Gong Yangyu let out a long sigh. The Eastern Victory region is going to be in chaos. Oh my God, what's going on here? Very quickly, more and more sects and groups rushed over after hearing the news. When they witnessed the horrifying scene before them, all of them turned pale with fright, and they were shocked to the extreme. It was a completely forbidden zone of death. No one had expected that the trip to the ancient desolate heaven domain would end with such a shocking ending. The Eastern Victory region, the world was really going to change. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The trip to the ancient desolate heaven domain, which opened once every 1,000 years, finally came to an end. There were some people who returned with great rewards, obtaining tremendous natural luck. Some people were disappointed and didn't get any benefits. However, some people would never be able to return. They fused with the ancient dust, and their souls returned to somewhere else. The Eastern Victory region. After the trip to the ancient desolate heaven domain ended, what followed was an unprecedented storm. Every sect, every race, 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 every race. Something big has happened. Something big has happened. In the ancient desolate heaven domain, the Thunder Saint Palace suffered a crushing defeat. The Great Clear sect was defeated. The Without Wang Valley and the Heaven Unified Empire were all sunk into the ocean. The leaders of the various sects were enraged, and they issued the highest level boundless kill order overnight to punish the murderer. The boiling news engulfed the entire victorious East region. In the streets and alleys, in the taverns and tea houses, everyone was talking about this unprecedented and shocking news. The number one genius of the province, Lei Mingho, died without a complete corpse. The broken limbs he brought back couldn't even be pieced together to form a complete body. Shintu Yiqian, the young master of Wu Wang Valley, was even more miserable. His limbs were all severed, and he was sliced in half. Tiantong Dynasty's top genius, Shaolin, was pierced through the heart by his own family's dripping god spear. He was nailed to the heaven-reaching platform and struggled pitifully. And Li Xiao, the third elder of the Tai Ching sect, even a peak expert at the third level of the sky, profound realm, died. How terrifying! Lei Jixin, that woman is definitely the most arrogant person in our province. I heard that she was even humiliated by Chu Hen in front of everyone. It seems like only she and Lei Xiaolan survived in the Thunder Saint Palace. However, the two of them were so shocked that they can't even speak. Oh my god, humiliating Lei Jixin? That's something I wouldn't even dare to dream about. One after another, shocking events occurred. Meteorites bombarded the victorious Dongsheng province. No matter what it was enough to cause the entire province to be shaken. Yet now, this string of major events had actually occurred at the same time, and it was obvious exactly how great a stir it had caused in the world. Inhumane. That's too terrifying. Who is the perpetrator? That person is the candidate to be the new sect leader of Mount Kunliu, Chu Hen. Chu Hen? A few days ago, this name was so unfamiliar to countless people that they wouldn't pay much attention to it. Unknown, nameless pawn. Right now, the two words Chu Hen resounded throughout the entire prefecture region. It shook everyone's souls and left an indelible mark in everyone's memories. He became famous in one battle. In this battle, blood flowed like a river and corpses were everywhere. In this battle, Chu Hen had turned many famous monstrous geniuses into his stepping stones and sacrificial pawns. Lei Mingho, the #1 genius of the province, a monstrous genius with a sacred lightning body. Shintu Tian, a resourceful strategist who was good at controlling the situation. All these geniuses died in Chu Hen's hands. Even though many people didn't see the scene in the Xian Kshetra region with their own eyes, however, the scene that he could imagine in his mind was enough to shock him and send a chill down his spine. It's a pity about Lei Mingho. I heard he was the next holy master of the Thunder Saint Palace. He was waiting to obtain the Xian Kshetra divine lightning heart in the ancient desolate heaven region. I didn't expect to meet this Chu Hen. Who is this Chu Hen? I've never heard of this name before. Mount Kunliu seemed to have produced Gong Yongyu 20 years ago. After that, I haven't heard of any outstanding geniuses. Who knows? However, I heard that this Chu Hen isn't from the victorious East province. He seems to be from the 100 Nations province. According to the rumors, he had some grudges with the people from the Seven Souls Palace. Because of a disagreement, he annihilated the entire Seven Souls Palace. 100 Nations province? You mean that tiny place? That's right. The chaos continued to ferment and became more and more intense. It was absolutely unprecedented for all the sects to issue a boundless killing order at the same time. Chapter 9:18. The storm was coming, and the province was in chaos. The end of the ancient desolate heaven region did not bring peace and harmony to the Yu province. Instead, the turmoil became more and more intense after the Xian Kshetra region. Chu Hen became famous after a single battle. From nobles to beggars, everyone knew Chu Hen's name. Lei Mingho was killed, and Lei Jixin was humiliated. These two monstrous geniuses with the Thunder Saint physique suffered a crushing defeat. This also incited the wrath of the Thunder Saint Palace. As one of the three great powers of the province, when had they ever suffered such an impact? Who dared to challenge the dignity of the Thunder Saint Palace? For mere Chu Hen, it was unprecedented in history that all the major sects and forces jointly issued an unlimited kill order. Moreover, this anger even spread to Mount Kunliu, the mysterious ice sect, and the entire 100 Nations province. If we can't find that person, I will make Mount Kunliu bleed. This was the order personally issued by the Thunder Saint Palace Master after Chu Hen disappeared for half a month. The moment this news spread, the entire victorious East province trembled. A personal grudge would soon escalate into a war between sections. Without a doubt, with the strength of the Thunder Saint Palace, eradicating Mount Kunliu was a piece of cake. Thereafter, Shun Tu Chongkong, the Valley Master of Wuwang Valley, and Luo Tsongtsong, the sect master of Tai Ching's sect, also sent out many experts to pursue Chu Hen's whereabouts. They also issued orders that Chu Hen's crimes were unforgivable. Even Mount Kunliu and the mysterious Ice sect, which had ties with him, would be punished. The Heaven Dynasty's actions were even more ruthless. They directly extended their hatred for Chu Hen to the Hundred Nations province. Pass down my orders. Send troops to the Hundred Nations province. I want to flatten the entire Hundred Nations province and make blood flow for 1,000 miles. When a king was angry, millions of corpses and rivers of blood would be formed. Today, it wasn't just one king who exploded in anger. The Heaven Dynasty was the only dynasty in the victorious East Province that was ranked among the top 10 forces. The entire Heaven Dynasty's military strength reached tens of millions. For a dynasty, having an army of 1 million was enough to establish a foothold in this chaotic world. An army of 10 million was more than 10 times the military strength of the other dynasties. This already showed the extraordinary strength of the Heaven Unified Dynasty. Once the Sovereign King's edict came out, the Heaven Empire immediately sent out 6 armies, each with 500,000 soldiers. A total of 3 million mighty soldiers began to move. They crossed the victorious Dongzhou in a grandiose manner and headed towards the Hundred Nations province. The Hundred Nations province could be said to be insignificant compared to the victorious Eastern province. Although the population was quite large and the military strength of each country far exceeded 3 million, whether it was equipment, quality of military strength, or combat ability, they couldn't compare to the Heaven Unified Empire. Between a big country and a small country, it was not a competition of numbers. Once the 3 million soldiers of the Heaven Unified Dynasty all moved south, then the Hundred Nations province wouldn't be able to stop them. All the sects, clans, and dynasties would be trampled to the ground by the cold cavalry. Similarly, he crossed the East Victory State and sent troops to the Hundred Nations state. This was definitely an unprecedented and crazy feat. Just the itinerary alone would consume a large amount of resources and money. However, the Tiantong dynasty was still resolute. This was enough to show how angry the sects were. The chaos in the province was caused by a mere Chu Hen. Moreover, it would become even more chaotic from now on. Mount Kunliu, bastard, this Thunder Saint Palace is simply going too far. In the conference hall, the demon-slaying palace lord Wen Liang fiercely smashed the teacup in his hand onto the ground. Scalding tea flew everywhere, and glass shards flew everywhere. The Void Temple Lord Xia Wuhe's face was also gloomy as he sat on a wide chair at the side. All of the elders of Mount Kunliu were also gathered there. Each of them had a solemn expression and didn't say a word. Just half an hour ago, the experts of the Thunder Saint Palace had already arrived at the foot of Mount Kunliu. They even threatened that Mount Kunliu had a hand over Chu Hen within 10 days. Otherwise, they would ruthlessly flatten the entire sect. Infuriating, they directly stepped on their heads. This caused everyone in Mount Kunliu to be both angry and fearful. Wen Liang, why did this happen? The Void Temple Lord Xia Wuhe, who had been silent for a long time, looked at Wen Liang with a deep gaze. Before the ancient desolate heaven domain opened, the higher-ups of Mount Kunliu had decided that the demon-slaying palace lord and the flying immortal palace lord would lead the team there. As for the Void Temple Lord, he would stay in the sect to prevent enemies from invading. However, who would have thought that the sect would be peaceful, while the ancient desolate heaven domain would undergo such a huge change? Yet, the ones who caused this situation were the people of Mount Kunliu. As the team leaders, Wen Liang and Qi Hanyu had to bear the responsibility. The demon-slaying palace lord shook his head in confusion. I don't know what happened. After the battle with the blood-refining hall's fish stream, we won. After that, I ordered Chu Hen, Lung Lingyan, and the others to search for the flying immortal palace lord. We never met again. I didn't even know that they had caused so much trouble. To be honest, Wen Liang also felt very helpless. The ancient desolate heaven domain was originally an ancient place to train the talents of the younger generation. In the ancient desolate heaven domain, it was best to let them act freely. Whether they were dragons or insects, it all depended on their own ability. After the battle with the blood-refining hall's fish stream, the demon-slaying palace lord did not act at all. When the trip to the ancient, desolate heaven domain came to an end, when Liang led the rest of the team back to the sect, never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that a few days after he returned, the entire province would be engulfed in an unprecedented, violent storm. Sigh. When Liang sighed, if I knew this was going to happen, I wouldn't have allowed Chu Hen to lead the team. What's the point of saying this now? Xiao Wuhe's expression turned even uglier as he asked, "Where are the others?" When Liang shook his head again, where were Lung Lingyan, Shan Zhen, and the others? Where was the flying immortal palace lord, Qi Hanyu? They had no idea about any of these. After all, everything had happened too suddenly. They did not even have time to prepare before Mount Tai collapsed in front of them. Even when Liang and Xiao Wuhe, who were used to seeing wind and rain, were in a state of stupefaction. Now that the Thunder Saint Palace had publicly denounced them, it was even more difficult for them to remain calm. What should we do now? If we can't hand over Chu Hen, our Mount Kun Lu will really be destroyed, an elder said worriedly. I have a plan that can solve the current situation. At this moment, an elder with a gloomy expression stood up and said in a deep voice, "We'll immediately announce to the public that Chu Hen is treacherous and unforgivable. From today onwards, he'll be expelled from the sect. From today onwards, he will no longer have anything to do with the sect. If the other sects need us, we can help them kill this brat as a warning. Shut up." Bang! Before the elder could finish speaking, the demon-slaying palace lord slammed his palm on the tea table beside him. His eyes were wide open as he pointed at the elder and said, "You're a disgrace to Mount Kun Lu's name by saying such shameless words." The elder's expression changed immediately. His body trembled as he quickly said, "Palace Lord, please don't be angry. I'm only doing this for the good of Mount Kun Lu. If the 1,000-year foundation of our ancestors is destroyed in our hands, it'll be an eternal hatred." When Liang trembled with anger, he looked at the silent crowd with sorrow and helplessness. "I didn't expect our Mount Kun Lu to be so afraid of death and unable to distinguish right from wrong. Forget it." When Liang's eyes turned red as he stared at the silent Void Palace Lord and said word by word, "Old Xie, the sect master position is yours. Wen Liang, will not be regretted even if I die, but I will definitely not implicate Mount Kun Lu." With that, Wen Liang waved his sleeves and turned to leave. In the entire hall, no one tried to stop him. Xiao Wuhe also frowned as if he was struggling in his heart. On one side was righteousness, and on the other side was the safety of the sect. No one did anything wrong. It was just that they had different standpoints. Report. At this moment, a young disciple rushed in anxiously and presented a letter with both hands. Palace Lord, a letter from the flying immortal Palace Lord." A letter from Qi Hanyu? All the elders couldn't help but show some emotions on their faces. "Give it to me," Xiao Wuhe said in a low voice. The young disciple presented the letter. Xiao Wuhe opened the letter with a serious expression and glanced at the few lines of words on it. Immediately after, Xiao Wuhe's arm trembled and his expression changed. When Liang wait, under the confused gazes of all the elders, Xiao Wuhe hurriedly chased after the demon-slaying palace lord who had already walked out of the door. "Is there anything else?" When Liang replied coldly, "Take a look." Xiao Wuhe hurriedly passed the letter over. At the same time, the elders behind him also came over. What kind of letter could cause the other party to lose his composure like this? When Liang frowned and took the letter impatiently. However, the content of the letter was very short. The general gist of it was that the two of them should not act rashly and temporarily deal with the people from the Thunder Saint Palace. As for the other matters, they should leave it to the other side to handle. This was not any useful information. However, when Liang's gaze shifted to the signature at the end of the letter, his face was also filled with shock. This disbelief began to fill everyone's faces, and everyone's eyes instantly revealed a look of pleasant surprise. It was as if they saw a ray of light in the endless darkness. At the bottom of the letter, There were 3 bold and forceful words written in sharp handwriting. Chapter 919. The moon splashed across the Milky Way, and the night fell on the earth. The darkness spread wantonly, causing undercurrents to surge in the Dongsheng province. There was much darkness and unease hidden in every corner of the province. Blood Refining Hall. The atmosphere was a little noisy. Even though it was midnight, there were still some busybodies who couldn't sleep whispering. Have you heard? Thunder Saint Palace came to Mount Kunliu to denounce us. I've known it for a long time. It's so King satisfying. Let's see if Mount Kunliu will be destroyed this time. This has really allowed us to vent our anger. In my opinion, Mount Kunliu deserves it. It's best if the Thunder Saint Palace is magnanimous enough to flatten their mountain gate. At that time, I'll step on the heads of those palace masters and make them lose all face even after they die. Good idea. Don't forget to call me. Mount Kunliu, you will also have this day. Ho Lai and Liao Qixio, the 2 deputy heads, died in the ancient Baron's Heaven Realm. I thought Mount Kunliu would suppress our Blood Refining Hall in the future. I didn't expect that Mount Kunliu would suffer retribution so soon. Several disciples of the Blood Refining Hall gathered together, gloating and talking loudly. However, at this moment, a ghost-like figure flew from the mountain gate at an extremely fast speed. It was so fast that it jumped a few miles. Who is it? The few of them were startled and immediately questioned him. As his voice fell, a beam of sharp sword light flashed like a meteor in the night sky. Everyone's pupils shrank. The sharp weapon pierced through their flesh, and they fell to the ground one after another. A thin red line on their necks rapidly thickened, and scarlet blood flowed and spread on the stairs. A sword as fast as lightning. Without any hesitation, the figure went straight to the central area of the Blood Refining Hall. Night. Gradually, it became silent. A waning moon hung high in the branches, looming in the dark clouds. At the periphery of a heavily guarded attic. This was a majestic pavilion. However, under the afterglow of the waning moon, it emitted waves of demonic aura. The air trembled slightly, and the phantom in the night kept approaching the attic. Hiss. In the silent night, there were bursts of sharp sword chi breaking the wind. The guards of the Blood Refining Hall fell to the ground one after another. Even at the moment of death, they didn't know what happened. Clang! The door of a loft was pushed open, and a sharp and powerful murderous aura swept out from the mysterious black figure standing at the door. There was a large cauldron in the center of the main hall of the pavilion. Dark red and dark blue mist constantly emerged from the cauldron. Under the dim light, it seemed incomparably mysterious and ever-changing. Beside the cauldron sat 3 old men. The faces of these 3 old men were haggard, their skin was wrinkled, and their eye sockets were sunken. Their gazes were cold. Who are you? How dare you break into my Blood Refining Hall? One of the old men shouted, and then he patted the ground beside him. With the strength of his palm, he suddenly rose into the air and set off a surging palm strength to hit the black figure. However, the black figure didn't even move. He struck with a sword, and the cold sword light was like a dark rainbow, rolling up the extremely cold, killing intent. The sword and the palm met in an instant, and a series of blood flowers flew. The old man's face changed dramatically. He saw that the long sword pierced through his withered palm, like piercing through a piece of thin paper. Before he could scream, the sharp sword that pierced through his palm didn't stop. It went straight down again and neatly pierced into his throat. One sword killed him. The sharpness was matchless. The other 2 old men were shocked and quickly got up. One of them rushed to the black figure again. Damn it, who are you? His voice hadn't even finished resounding through the air when the mysterious black shadow suddenly vanished on the spot, and it transformed into a humanoid sword chi that charged forward. Bang! Blood splashed, and internal organs flew. The ruthless humanoid sword chi was like the sickle in the hand of death, and it directly cut the second old man into 2 halves. You? The last remaining old man's eyes were wide open. and his old eyes were filled with endless shock. One sword flying immortal, art. As soon as the word came out, the cold sword light immediately cut his throat. Blood splashed, and he fell to the ground with his eyes open, powerless and angry. In the blink of an eye, the 3 old men who guarded this place died one after another. However, for the mysterious black figure, it was as simple as killing 3 chicks. He was so indifferent that he didn't even blink his eyes. Then he slowly walked to the big cauldron in front of him, which was emitting dense, evil chi. He raised his hand and opened the lid of the cauldron. There were 2 foam-like spherical membranes in the cauldron. Through the almost transparent membrane, a dark red giant ant was wrapped in one of the spherical membranes. The giant ant was about 1,000 times the size of a normal ant, and its body was emitting an extremely high temperature. Its pair of antennae swayed gently, and there was a low and subtle sound. In the other sphere, there was a praying mantis that was just as large. It was about 10 times the size of a normal praying mantis, and its pair of extremely sharp mantis hands emitted a cold light like a blade. Its pitch-black eyes seemed to be an evil creature from hell. Looking at the 2 strange creatures in the cauldron, the mysterious black figure showed a cold smile at the corner of his mouth. Soon after, he closed the lid of the cauldron and stored the entire cauldron into his bag. With a move of his body, he quickly disappeared into the boundless night. About a quarter of an hour, the blood-refining hall, which had not been silent for a long time, directly broke into a huge chaos. Bad news! Fire Ant Queen, Blood Mantis Emperor has been stolen. Oh my God! Hurry up and inform the sect head. Turmoil, unprecedented turmoil, swept through the entire blood-refining hall. The silence of the night was broken. Many figures rushed towards the attic in a hurry. When they saw the terrible situation in the attic, everyone felt like being hit by a bolt from the blue, and their faces were as pale as paper. Who is it? Who the hell is it? A panicked figure angrily pushed away the crowd in front of him. His dazed look did not match his gorgeous clothes at all. Sect head, several elders of the blood-refining hall hurried to welcome him. Get lost. Don't block me. That person shook off the crowd and directly rushed to the entrance of the attic. What appeared in front of him were 3 horrible corpses in an empty main hall. The 3 elders who guarded here were all dead. The cauldron that was originally placed in the center also disappeared without a trace. In an instant, the sect head of the blood-refining hall trembled and directly sat on the ground. It was as if he had aged more than 10 years in an instant. It's over. It's completely over. Everyone present was silent. All of them were furious and powerless at the same time. Others might not know, but they knew very well that the 2 vice sect heads, Holai and Liao Qixio, had died in battle during the trip to the ancient desolate heaven domain, and many elite disciples had died. The blood-refining hall had directly suffered an unimaginable loss, and the Fire Ant Queen and Blood Mantis Emperor were their last hope. Now, their last hope was also shattered. Obviously, not long ago, they were still gloating over the misfortune of Mount Kunlu. Who did it? Chapter 9:20. The next day, the theft of the blood-refining hall was like the wind passing through the wall and quickly spread in the Dongxing State region. Have you heard? The blood-refining hall was stolen last night. Oh, what was stolen? It said that it took them 200 or 300 years to create a species. As for what it is, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's something very important. It said that the master of the blood-refining hall was so angry that he fell ill. Hey, the blood-refining hall is so unlucky. Although they practice some unorthodox methods, they're the best in our province. It's not impossible for them to become one of the top 10 forces in the province in the future. However, Holai and Liao Qixio both died in the ancient Baron's Heaven realm. Now that they've suffered such a heavy loss, I'm afraid they will be reduced to a 4th or 5th class sect. It's really not peaceful recently. I wonder where that Chu Hen is hiding. No matter where he hides, he will die in the end. This time, all the sects are determined to kill him. Even the Thousand Worlds sect and the Palace of Jiuhua can't save his life. Rumors and gossips spread like wildfire. This time, the chaos returned. Woo! Roar! The Mang Mountain was thousands of miles long. The undulating peaks were like pillars reaching the sky. This was the largest and steepest demon beast mountain range in the Dongxing province. Here, demons ran amok and thousands of beasts lived. In the deepest part of the mountain range, a forbidden area that ordinary people couldn't enter, there was a powerful heaven beast that was comparable to an expert in the profound sky realm. Roar! At this moment, in a deep and gloomy forest, tall and lush trees covered the sky and the sun. The moist air was filled with a pungent smell of blood. A huge demon beast that looked like a snapping turtle was lying on the ground and growling in a deep voice. It looked like a snapping turtle and was covered with a thick and heavy armor. Saber snapping turtle. This was a level 2 heaven beast, a terrifying species that was comparable to an expert in the second stage of the profound sky realm. Even in the entire province, there were very few demonic beasts. The sword-backed snapping turtle looked dispirited, as if it had been wounded. Fresh blood flowed out from the corner of its mouth. Based on the collapsed ground and tree trunks, it was not difficult to see that a particularly intense battle had just broken out here. A person was standing in front of the sword-backed snapping turtle. The slender and young figure exuded a cold aura. That handsome side profile was angular, and there was a faint evil aura about it. Roar! The sword-backed snapping turtle stared at the human man with a fearful and sinister gaze. Subsequently, the latter flipped his palm, and a mutant fruit with a gentle golden glow appeared in his hand. Myriad beast fruit. It was a special spirit treasure that could make demon beasts drop their guard against humans. Buzz! The young man flipped his hand, and the 10,000 beast fruit landed lightly on the ground. After the 1,000 beast fruit fell to the ground, it turned into a ball of golden liquid and merged with the soil. Then, a strange green sprout rapidly grew out of the ground. In the blink of an eye, the green sprout seemed to have experienced spring and autumn, becoming a strange plant about 30 to 40 centimeters tall. There was a bud at the top of the flower. The flower bud slowly bloomed, and a crystal-clear fruit was hidden inside. At the same time, the young man took out a scroll painting. He unfurled the scroll, and as the ancient runes revolved around it, a pattern that resembled the appearance of a demonic beast appeared. The revolving 1,000 beast picture. Compared to before, the number of demon beasts on the revolving 1,000 beast picture had increased by a lot. Roar! Looking at the myriad beast fruit and the revolving 1,000 beast picture in the young man's hand, the sword-backed snapping turtle let out a low roar again. Obviously, there were only two paths in front of it. One was to become this human's summoned beast. The other was to die. Without any words, the young man just stared at the heavenly beast with indifference. That deep gaze exuded a kind of aura that made people's hearts palpitate. In the end, the sword-backed snapping turtle chose to live. It stuck its head out and swallowed the myriad beast fruit in its mouth. Buzz, buzz. Then, a layer of gentle golden halo appeared on the sword-backed snapping turtle's body. The effects of the myriad beast fruit took effect, and the injuries on its body were immediately alleviated. At the same time, when it looked at the human in front of it again, its gaze was less cold and more gentle. Subsequently, the sword-backed snapping turtle raised one of its huge claws, and a drop of beast blood seeped out from its scales and lightly dripped onto the revolving 1,000 beast picture like raindrops. Whoosh! A strand of light ripples spread out in all directions, and the scroll painting emitted waves of obscure energy waves. The drop of blood quickly melted on the scroll and converged into a strange pattern of a crocodile's head in a blank space. After finishing all this, the sword-backed snapping turtle slowly stood up, and moving its huge body, it turned around and entered the dark forest, leaving behind a row of grass and shrubs that had been trampled into mud. Myriad beast fruit. The revolving 1,000 beasts picture. This young man was none other than Chu Hen. When he obtained the myriad beast fruit and the revolving 1,000 beast picture from the wind-soaring origin, he had once squandered 400 myriad beast fruits and left 200 for storage. Compared to before, he used the method of luring those demonic beasts into eating the myriad beast fruit. Now, it was much simpler and more violent. He directly used the method of forcefully subduing them and signing a summoning contract with them. After all, the higher the level of the demonic beast, the higher its intelligence. The intelligence of a heavenly beast was already not inferior to that of a human. Using the method of deception would not work at all. Casually putting away the revolving thousand beasts picture, Chu Hen silently left in another direction. However, after walking for less than 10 steps, he stopped. Boom! In the next moment, an incomparably violent force that was comparable to a gushing torrent, with Chu Hen as the center, swept away all the trees in the forest in all directions. One by one, the towering trees were smashed into pieces, and wood shavings flew everywhere. The flowers and grasses turned into powder, and a thick layer of soil on the ground was directly blown off. Swish, swish, swish. A series of swift and fierce wind-breaking auras attacked, and more than 10 menacing figures directly surrounded Chu Hen, and their majestic auras were like mountains. Are you going to chop off your own hands and feet, or do you want me, Lei Wen, to do it myself? A heavy and cold voice was spat out from the mouth of a middle-aged man. This person's aura was extraordinary, and his eyes were like torches. His arms were intertwined with lightning, as if there were two lightning dragons coiled around him, constantly letting out heart-palpitating mana cries. As one of the three major forces, the Thunder Saint Palace was still the first to find him. Lei Wen, the youngest and most promising elder of the Thunder Saint Palace. Everyone knew that this person was only 40 years old, but he had already reached the 4th level of the heavenly profound realm. At the same time, he was also the vanguard sent by the Thunder Saint Palace to kill Chu Hen. Lei Wen was vicious and merciless, and his methods were cruel. It was often said that as long as Lei Wen made a move, no matter who the opponent was, the best choice was to take their own lives before Lei Wen arrived. This sentence was enough to show how terrifying Lei Wen was. Feeling the strong, killing intent of the people around him, Chu Hen's expression was abnormally calm. You came quite quickly, but with just a few of you, it's not enough. The indifferent voice caused the killing intent of the people from the Thunder Saint Palace to intensify. Lei Wen revealed a faint sneer. I hope that after I count to 5, you can still say these words so calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, endless killing intent surged like an erupting flame. Chapter 9:21. I hope that after I count to 5, you'll still be able to say those words so calmly. As Lei Wen's voice fell, a monstrous and majestic aura suddenly swept out from the forest like a volcano erupting. An incomparably heavy sound rang out. The earth trembled, and the birds and beasts in the forest in the distance flew away in fright. As if they had encountered a violent storm, the ground cracked and rocks rose into the air. The violent energy directly engulfed the group of Thunder Saint Palace experts. Endless evil energy swept out in all directions with an unstoppable force. Bang! Then, a figure with a face full of shock was directly sent flying. At the same time, the gorgeous lightning armor on his body shattered like crystal fragments. Soon after, he crashed into several large trees in succession before he was able to stop. Ugh! Lei Wen sat paralyzed against a large tree as he spat out a mouthful of blood. His round eyes were filled with intense shock as he lowered his head in disbelief to look at his own chest. A saint sword swallowing and spitting green patterns of light had directly pierced deep into his chest. His mind trembled, and his entire body trembled. This high-spirited and extraordinary-looking youngest elder of Thunder Saint Palace was now like a completely different person compared to the arrogant and dignified person he was just a moment ago. The only thing that could be seen on his face was unconcealable fear. Ta-ta-ta! The sound of steady footsteps on the gravel produced powerful sounds. Amidst the dancing dust, a young and indifferent figure approached Lei Wen from afar. As death gradually approached, this young man was like a demon from hell, inspiring fear. How can this be? Lei Wen raised his head to look at the handsome face with a hint of demonic charm. How did your cultivation level increase so quickly? The Battle of Xian Kuan Sky Region. According to the information provided by the surviving eyewitnesses, Chu Hen had only just stepped into the first level of the Sky Profound realm. However, with his many powerful trump cards, he had the battle strength to kill a third-level Sky Profound realm expert. However, when he killed the Clear Sky Sect's third elderly Xiao, Chu Hen was also injured. Therefore, the conclusion that the outside world came to was that Chu Hen's battle value was slightly higher than the third level of the Sky Profound realm, but lower than the fourth level. Lei Wen's cultivation had entered the fourth level of the Sky Profound realm many years ago, and had already reached the late stage, or even the peak stage. It was not difficult to take down Chu Hen. However, unexpectedly, in just a single exchange, Chu Hen mercilessly stabbed the blue sky sword into his opponent's chest. Chu Hen stared at him indifferently. He slowly extended his hand and gripped the hilt of Blue Ran's sword. Have you ever heard of the slaughter power? Chu Hen lightly spat out a few words. The intense pain caused Lei Wen's face to turn pale. He frowned and muttered to himself in a low voice. The power of slaughter? The cold aura emanating from Chu Hen made him feel a chill that he had never felt before. It was as if the person standing in front of him was not a human, but a demon. Lei Wen grabbed the middle section of the sword with one hand and tried to pull it out, but the power from Chu Hen's hand was so strong that it felt like it was stuck in a rock. Who exactly are you? Go ask the King of Hell. The cold voice directly sentenced the other party to death. Lei Wen's pupils shrank sharply. The wound on his chest first loosened, and a sword light that was as fast as lightning flashed in front of his eyes. The cold sword edge swept across his throat like a thin piece of paper. Hiss! Bright blood blossomed in the air. The thin red line on his neck slowly thickened, and his vitality rapidly drained away. Lei Wen's eyes gradually became slack, and finally, they completely froze. Chu Hen's emotions did not fluctuate much. A drop of blood slid down the sword that he was holding diagonally. He did not take another look and directly turned to leave. The mountain wind that blew in his face was somewhat bone-chilling. A few days later, in a vast mountain range near the border of the Eastern Victory Province. The mountain range here was not particularly steep, and there were no lush forests. Most of the central area was dominated by solid rock layers, and the outer area was filled with green forests. At this moment, a mighty and majestic army, like a long dragon, stepped into a canyon. On both sides of the canyon were steep mountain ridges. At a glance, the canyon ran from the north to the south, and it was like a vast and majestic chasm. This army was very powerful, and there were as many as 500,000 people. From afar, it looked like a black tide surging into the canyon. No matter how one looked at it, it was very majestic. The vanguard at the front was the cavalry. Every general in armor was riding a war horse. However, these were not ordinary war horses. Every war horse was 5 to 6 meters tall, and their 4 hooves were huge. Furthermore, there were balls of green light on their hooves, wind-chasing beasts. Even the weakest among them was a spirit-level demon beast. This type of demon beast was extremely fast and had a very shocking sprinting ability. In front of them, ordinary war horses were no different from children in front of strongman. Behind the cavalry was also an army of ferocious beasts controlled by humans. These ferocious beasts had the bodies of cows, and their heads were like leopards. Their bodies were wrapped in thick iron chains, and their ferocious teeth were exposed. They emitted a bloodthirsty and cruel aura. General, according to our speed, we will need at most 3 days to reach the 100-nation state. In the middle of the cavalry and the army of ferocious beasts, there was a wind-chasing beast with green spiritual inscriptions all over its body, emitting a high and mighty aura like a king. On the back of this wind-chasing beast king was a man wearing a flowing light sacred armor with a gloomy gaze. This person had a pair of triangular eyes, and his gaze was deep. His entire body was secretly filled with an obscure hostility. This was an aura that only people whose hands were stained with blood would have. When he heard the three words 100-nation state, the middle-aged man could not help but reveal a frivolous sneer. To think that I, Wu Gue, have fought for the empire for more than 20 years, and have conquered countless cities and conquered lands. I never thought that I would be sent to attack such a small place today. It was obvious that this person was very disdainful of the 100-nation state. He was so disdainful that he did not even have the right to attack. The deputy general next to him smiled playfully. Including our wind-chasing army, His Majesty has sent out 6 armies, a total of 3 million soldiers to attack the 100-nation state. This is enough to show how furious His Majesty is this time. Wu Gue narrowed his eyes. 3 million soldiers? You've really made a barbaric place like the 100-nation state proud. General, I wonder how we should deal with those lowly dogs in the 100-nation state? Hey, of course, I'll have to ask my soldiers. Wu Gue sneered. Wu Gue sneered. Then he turned around to look at the mighty wind-chasing army behind him and shouted, Soldiers, the right deputy general asked me how we should deal with the peasants after we reach the 100 Nations continent. What do you think? 10,000 people responded to his call. In an instant, a vigorous and high-spirited voice reverberated in the entire valley. Millions of corpses, rivers of blood, and slaughter them all. Ha ha! This expedition is much easier than before. I've given the order that once we arrive at the 100-nation state, all of you can enjoy yourselves to your heart's content. A sinister smile appeared on Wu Gui's face. At the same time, many of the soldiers' eyes were filled with burning greed as well. What kind of leader would have what kind of subordinates? What he said was absolutely correct. In the past, when Wu Gue attacked cities and seized land, he would often kill countless people. All the men would be killed, and the women would be reduced to tools for his pleasure. In the eyes of Wu Gue and his soldiers, the 100-nation state was like a paradise that was bestowed to them. They were unprecedentedly powerful there. Together with the other armies, they could easily sweep the 100-nation state and do whatever they wanted there. Thank you, General. A loud and passionate voice reverberated in the entire valley. For a time, everyone moved forward with great momentum. The long line of soldiers entered the Great Moat Canyon. At this moment, everyone suddenly sensed an ice-cold aura. Everyone was startled. They saw a slender figure standing at the top of a cliff in front of them. Chapter 922. The mighty wind-chasing army was like a long dragon that had entered the Grand Canyon. It was a majestic sight to see 500,000 soldiers. From afar, they looked like a surging black tide. When the entire army entered the Grand Canyon of the Grand Canyon, everyone suddenly sensed a cold aura that made them feel uneasy. A chilly wind blew over, and the temperature of the entire canyon plummeted. A young figure that emitted a devilish aura stood on the steep mountain wall in front of them. The way he looked at them was as though he was looking at a group of people who were about to die. Who's blocking our way? Are you tired of living? One of the deputy general of the cavalry vanguard shouted. The corner of the young man's mouth curled up slightly. His emotionless voice was transmitted to everyone's ears. I'll give all of you a choice. Go back to your dynasty immediately. Although his tone was calm, everyone could clearly sense the threat in his voice. Everyone was shocked and puzzled. Who was this guy? After all, there were 500,000 elite soldiers standing in front of him at this moment. It was a powerful army that could crush any dynasty in the 100 Nations prefecture. A mere brat dared to speak so arrogantly here. Wu Gue glared at Duan Ling Tian as he pointed his finger forward and said, Where did you come from, brat? How dare you try to act mysterious in front of me? If you want to have a taste of being torn apart by 5 horses, you can continue fighting there. I'll give you to the count of 3. It seems like you're really stupid. Don't blame me then. Wu Gue sneered as a cruel expression appeared on his face. 3, 2. The cold and indifferent voice was like the countdown of the god of death, causing strands of shapeless ripples to appear in the air and reverberate within the gorge, and it seemed to be slightly ethereal and distant. Wu Gue, whose hands were stained with the blood of countless people, was also a ruthless person. How could he be so easily frightened by the other party? Drag this idiot to death with a horse. Wu Gui shouted fiercely. Yes. The few deputy generals by his side immediately obeyed the order and flew up to capture the other party. Almost at the same time, that person's throat moved slightly, and a voice that sounded like an order of execution was spat out. One, it's a pity that you didn't cherish this one and only chance to live. Roar, roar. Along with his voice, an earth-shattering roar of a ferocious beast came from all directions of the canyon without any warning. The impact of the sound wave, which was comparable to a tsunami of thunder, directly knocked many soldiers to the ground, causing their blood to churn. Following that, the earth shook and the mountains swayed. The earth pulsed. It was as if an incomparably huge earthquake had occurred. The world spun and the mountains swayed. Boom! In the next second, the ground in the middle of the Grand Canyon suddenly collapsed. The earth sank as if it had been hollowed out, and a huge sinkhole immediately appeared under the sky. Caught off guard, the soldiers lost their footing and fell into the huge pit. Rocks tumbled and dust flew everywhere. Blood-curdling screams rang out. The collapsed ground was like a sand sculpture that had lost its support, collapsing rapidly from the middle. The 500,000 soldiers fell into the huge pit under their feet one after another. Humans and demonic beasts huddled together, and countless people were trampled to death by their own people. What? Commander Wu Gui's face darkened. He was both shocked and furious. He looked at the ground that was collapsing inch by inch. He saw that the rocks in the ground had actually been dug out into a hollow space. The rocks under the Grand Canyon had been hollowed out and turned into a super huge beehive. One collapse, all collapse. One collapse, all collapse. How was this possible? With the limitations of humans, it was impossible for them to complete such an amazing project. Moreover, it just had to be during this critical period. Boom! Bang! The ground collapsed instantly, and hundreds of thousands of people fell into a sinkhole that was dozens of meters deep. The scene was spectacular, like a colony of ants in a cage. The sky was dark, and the earth was dark. However, they were all well-trained elites. They quickly stabilized themselves and quickly leaped up to escape the predicament. Swish, swish! However, following that, a series of chaotic noises came from all directions. Everyone's expression changed. They saw huge red ants crawling out from the cracks in the surrounding rocks. Each of the red ants was the size of a fist. They were dark red and emitted a scorching heat, like terrifying creatures that crawled out from the magma in the Earth's core. They were densely packed, tens of thousands of them. And in the center of the ant colony, there was an even larger ant queen. This is a fire ant colony? Damn it, run. Indescribable shock filled every panicked face. No matter when, the fire ant swarm was always a kind of disaster to them. Hiss, hiss. Without any pause, tens of thousands of fire ants rushed toward the Heaven Dynasty's elite soldiers like a red tide. The heart-wrenching screams continued. The fire ants' scorching heat was like a piece of red-hot iron. Their sharp teeth were like flaming blades that could easily bite through people's blood vessels. Anyone who was bitten by the fire ants felt as if their blood was burning. Their entire body turned red as they struggled in pain and died in madness. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the huge pit turned into a sea of fire. The fire ant colony quickly shuttled through the crowd, bringing with it balls of high-temperature flames. Damn it! General Wu Gui and a group of stronger deputy generals stood in the air and roared anxiously and angrily. Hurry up! All of you crawl out. In the panic, everyone had no time to care about others. They all stepped on the people below and climbed up. For a moment, countless soldiers were trampled to death by their own people. But before they could get out of danger, an even more chaotic aura attacked them. Buzz, the space around them fluctuated restlessly, and a black shadow enveloped them from both ends of the canyon. A thick aura of death came whistling over. Wu Gui and the other deputy generals were all shocked. It was a swarm of insects again. There were countless blood-blade mantises among the black dots. Their eyes were as black as ink, and their hands were bright red, flashing with a dazzling cold light. They looked like bloodthirsty, poisonous creatures from hell. Whoosh! Countless blood-blade mantises mercilessly pounced on the panicked soldiers of the Tito dynasty. They moved as fast as lightning, and their hands were as sharp as blades. The soldiers' throats were cut open and their chests were pierced. They died on the spot. With great difficulty, they climbed to the shore and escaped from the fire ant colony. But before they could catch their breath, they were killed by the blood-blade mantises. Hundreds of thousands of elite soldiers were squeezed into a small area, waiting to be slaughtered. Not to mention resisting, it was difficult to even stretch out one's arms and legs. Roar! Following that, huge, ferocious beasts emerged one after another. They looked like ferocious gods and devils, appearing on the cliffs on both sides of the Grand Canyon. The frightening, ferocious might came crashing down, causing the inner defenses of the people below to completely collapse. The ferocious beasts stomped hard on the walls of the mountain ridges beneath them, causing deep cracks to appear on the stone walls. Rocks of all sizes tumbled down. The people in the canyon were powerless like ants, and they were in a miserable state, merciless slaughter. Even the illustrious Wu Gui had never seen such a terrible way of killing. If the situation continued to develop like this, in less than a cup of tea's time, 500,000 elite soldiers would be trapped and killed here, slaughtering 500,000 people in one go. What kind of action was this? Compared to this, Wu Gui was not even worth mentioning. Then, Wu Gui's eyes trembled as he looked at the cold young figure. From the beginning to the end, his expression was especially calm, as if he was looking at something unimportant. Chapter 923. You are Chu Hen? The sudden enlightenment made Wu Gui, the general of the wind-chasing army, feel as if his soul was trembling. The beasts roared, the fire ants besieged, and the blood mantis harvested. It was as if the 500,000 soldiers had been dragged into an abyss of eternal damnation. What awaited them was a horrifying massacre that they would never be able to recover from. Chu Hen looked condescendingly at Wu Gui's face, which was filled with endless horror. His deep eyes exuded a chilling coldness. Only at this moment did Wu Gui suddenly sober up. A bloodbath in 100 Kingdoms province? What a ridiculous idea it was. They had not even left the border of the victorious East Province, and they would all be buried here. It was sad, pitiful, and ridiculous. Hearing the mournful screams behind him, Wu Gui's face twisted. Wu Gui's face twisted. He glared at them and roared hysterically. "Stop. We're going back to the city now." Chu Hen's mouth twitched, and he replied in a mocking tone, "I'm sorry, it's too late." Too late. He had given Wu Gui a chance at the beginning, but he did not cherish it. Some things, once missed, meant that he would lose everything. Damn it. Wu Gui was flustered and exasperated. His eyes were spitting fire. He raised a long saber and charged at Chu Hen with ferocious killing intent. "Damn, brat. I'm going to fight you to the death today." If he lost his army, Wu Gui would die if he went back. Since he was going to die anyway, he did not have much to worry about. Today, this general will see if you're really that evil. Die for me. All the true inner force in his body erupted without reservation. Wu Gui's momentum was astonishing, and the saber in his hand dragged out a solid tiger shadow in the void. The space fluctuated restlessly. This saber strike was very powerful. But when the opponent's broadsword was still more than 10 meters away from Chu Hen, an ear-piercing, furious roar suddenly exploded from behind Wu Gui. A thick aura of destruction surged toward him. Wu Gui's expression changed dramatically. Before he could recover from his shock, a sharp crocodile's mouth bit into his body. Bang! Blood rained down and internal organs splattered everywhere. The merciless mouth bit Wu Gui's body into two pieces from middle. Ah! A shrill scream reverberated through the entire canyon. Then, a huge scaly claw swept over and heavily slapped Wu Gui's head. Bang! A circle of blood mist surged out like ripples on the surface of water. Wu Gui's upper body was smashed into pieces by the terrifying impact. Roar! The sword-backed snapping turtle in the sky let out a deafening roar. Chu Hen stood proudly at the edge of the cliff like a king who ruled the world. With a flip of his hand, he slaughtered thousands of soldiers with the death of their commander. The wind-chasing army's last line of defense completely collapsed. The entire Grand Canyon had been reduced to a land of death. The sinkhole turned into a sea of fire. The bloodblade mantis reaped lives to its heart's content. At the same time, gigantic demonic beasts were constantly crashing into the mountain ridges on both sides of the canyon. Boulders rolled down, burying countless people alive. After an unknown amount of time, the mournful cries gradually quieted down. The huge mountain range became deathly silent in an instant. The entire vast canyon was now filled with corpses. 500,000 elite soldiers had all turned into ghosts. Sizzle. Buzz. The fire ants and the bloodblade mantis swarmed back and forth in the valley. Many huge demonic beasts lowered their heads and whimpered, as if they were quietly waiting for Chu Hen's orders. "Get out here." Chu Hen's eyes turned cold as he shouted in a deep voice. Swish, swish. As soon as his voice fell, dozens of cold and gloomy figures flashed out from behind a mountain range. Everyone looked at the scene in the canyon, and not a single one of them was not shocked to the point that their faces paled. Their eyebrows were tightly knitted together, and their gazes towards Chu Hen were filled with fear and viciousness. "You are simply inhumane. Do the dogs of Innocence Valley have the right to talk to me about humanity?" Chu Hen replied coldly. Everyone's expression became even more unsightly. They could tell that Chu Hen's disgust for Wuwang Valley was much greater than the Heavenly Imperial Court. Considering the current situation, a middle-aged man in a black robe turned to the people behind him and said, "Old 4, Old 5, stay here and help me. The rest of you, immediately go to the major contact points and inform the Valley Master. The thief, Chu Hen, has been found." "Yes." Everyone immediately nodded in agreement. According to the latest information, they already knew that Elder Lei 1 of the Thunder Saint Palace had been killed. What level had Chu Hen's strength reached? No one dared to make any guesses. In a situation where they didn't have enough confidence in taking down Chu Hen, the best way was to immediately notify Wuwang Valley to send reinforcements. A cold wind blew. Except for the 3 people in the lead, the rest of the people quickly retreated. They turned to look at Chu Hen, their cold eyes surging with killing intent. "Since you're already here, then don't leave." "Humph, don't be too proud, little bastard." The black-robed man's eyes darkened. Then he raised his hand and waved. Swoosh! In the next moment, the 2 figures beside him released a majestic and monstrous force at the same time. The 2 of them rushed towards Chu Hen, one on the left and one on the right. As they moved, the one on the left erupted with incomparably hot flames, while the one on the right released a bone-chilling ice aura. Burning Skyblade. Ice Demon Sword. Buzz. Whoosh. True Essence soared into the sky, and a dazzling scarlet flame blade dragged out a prairie fire as it slashed through the air towards Chu Hen on the other side. Amidst the raging snowstorm, a huge sword condensed from ice pierced through the sky, sweeping up a biting cold, killing intent as it attacked. The scarlet flame blade and the huge ice sword were like 2 divine blades that could tear the sky and the earth apart. They were extremely lethal. Chu Hen, who was standing at the edge of the cliff, was enduring 2 extremely fierce waves of air. The surrounding space was trembling uneasily. Then, Chu Hen's eyelids twitched, and a purple light jumped in his eyes. Bang! A heavy and shocking explosion exploded in the sky, and a gorgeous purple light curtain blocked in front of Chu Hen like a divine shield. There was endless turbulence in all directions, and the shock wave of the fusion of ice and fire was like a surging tide. "Humph, your defense is really good, but unfortunately, you can't defend a second time." A frivolous sneer came from the front, and the black-robed man had suddenly flashed in front of Chu Hen. There was no doubt that the 2 people just now had no intention of killing Chu Hen with a single blow. Their purpose was very simple, which was to create an opportunity for the black-robed man. "It's over, little bastard." The black-robed man's eyes were full of ferocity, and an extremely violent, true essence light pattern floated in his palm. The light pattern flowed rapidly and instantly turned into an extremely sharp bone spur. The bone spur, which had the power to penetrate everything, stabbed at Chu Hen's throat at an extremely fast speed. Hiss! The sound of flesh being pierced was especially soft and sweet. The black-robed man's pupils dilated rapidly, and the other two's faces were also filled with deep shock. The visual impact seemed to slow down the flow of time. The fatal bone spur in the black-robed man's palm was only a finger's breadth away from Chu Hen's throat, but the latter's chest had already been pierced through by a huge sword light. The sharp sword aura was like the first rays of dawn that pierced through the clouds, and it was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wound on the black-robed man's chest kept opening up, and as blood danced in the air, his vitality also rapidly disappeared. The other two's expressions changed drastically, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They were both shocked and horrified. Boom! In the next second, a towering purple flame soared into the sky and swallowed the two of them. Roar! Roar! At the same time, the group of demons immediately caught up with the experts from Wuwang Valley who were preparing to report. Chapter 924. Killing one was a sin, but killing 10,000 was a hero. In just a few days, the news of the wind-chasing legion, one of the 6 elite squads that the Heaven Dynasty had sent to the 100 Kingdoms province, perished in a mountain range between the two provinces, once again set off a shocking wave in the victorious East province. Not a single one of the 500,000 elite soldiers survived. All of them were killed and slaughtered. The shock brought about by this news was comparable to a landslide or tsunami. All the great sects and powers were greatly shocked, and the miserable state of those 500,000 soldiers before their deaths couldn't help but appear in everyone's minds. The wails of the wronged souls resounded in the valley. What a scary guy. He killed 500,000 people in one go. Just thinking about it sends shivers down one's spine. The streets and alleys, taverns, and tea houses could be said to be abnormally bustling these days. Even if it was a few young ladies who never left their homes, or 3-year-old children who didn't know any better, they would pay special attention to the name Chu Hen. Without a doubt, after the ancient desolation heaven domain ended, everything that the young man named Chu Hen did attracted the attention of everyone in the province. He killed so many people. It's simply inhumane. I hope that bastard will be caught and killed by the sects as soon as possible. That's right. As long as Chu Hen lives, the turmoil in the victorious East province will never stop. You guys don't know, but Elder Lei Wun, the Thunder Saint Palace, was also killed. What? Elder Lei Wun is dead? That's right. Not only Lei Wun, but also the 3rd, 4th, and 5th elders of the Innocence Valley. It's said that they all died in the hands of Chu Hen. The robbery of the blood refining sect was also done by Chu Hen. Oh my God. Crazy. Terrifying. More and more news about Chu Hen caused people to fiercely suck in a breath of cold air. They became more and more shocked. The storm in the Victory East region became more and more intense. At the same time, there were more and more teams that joined in the hunt for Chu Hen. Other than the various large sects, there were also people from all walks of life who held slogans of upholding justice and thought highly of themselves. They also chased after Chu Hen's whereabouts. However, anyone with a discerning eye knew that those people were merely after the treasures in Chu Hen's possession and the so-called Black Kshetra, divine lightning heart. Moreover, if anyone were to kill Chu Hen at this time, their reputation would absolutely be like the sun in the sky, and they would gain both fame and fortune. Of course, there were also a small number of people who admired Chu Hen. Killing one is a crime. Slaughtering 10,000 is a hero. Chu Hen single-handedly massacred hundreds of thousands of people. Such a magnificent feat would definitely shock the world. As the waters of the Victory East region became more and more muddy, the situation became more and more chaotic. In less than half a month, even more explosive news spread. After the Wind-Chasing Legion, the other elite divisions of the Heaven Unified Dynasty, the Devil Tiger, Bloodthorn, and Xiongho, suffered heavy losses from Chu Hen. Although these three legions were not completely annihilated like the wind-chasing legion led by Wu Gui, they also suffered heavy casualties. Each of them lost 100 to 200,000 soldiers. The huge blow caused them to be utterly defeated, and they no longer had the strength to attack the 100 Nations region. Not only that, but there were also more than 30 intense battles that erupted around these three great legions. Every time someone discovered them, they would only see a ground littered with corpses that were too horrible to look at. More and more people joined the ranks of those who chased after Chu Hen, but every time they did so, it would only result in pointless bloodshed. In a short period of around 20 days, Chu Hen had actually single-handedly massacred nearly 1 million people in the Victory East region. Massacred 1 million people. This was definitely a very terrifying number. Just the Heaven Unified Dynasty alone had contributed more than 90% of the people killed. For thousands of years, this could be said to be an epic catastrophe for the Victory East region. As the incident continued to ferment, the higher-ups of the Thunder Saint Palace, Innocence Valley, Tai Ching's sect, and other large sects became even more furious. The unlimited kill order was upgraded again. The unprecedented bounty on must-kill order was once again issued by the various large sections. The content of the must-kill order was that no matter who it was, as long as the sect was able to take down Chu Hen's head, they would be able to fulfill all of the conditions the person asked for. To countless people, this was definitely a great opportunity for them to soar into the sky with a single leap. Although Chu Hen had caused great upheavals time and time again, there were still many desperate people who were tempted by him. Humans die for wealth, and birds die for food. This was the principle of seeking wealth amidst danger. Perhaps when Chu Hen couldn't hold on any longer, he would just happen to be in front of them. The greed and fluke of human nature started to make this killing storm that engulfed the entire province seem far away. Not only did the various large sects want to make Chu Hen their target, but they also wanted him to become the public enemy of the entire world. For a moment, there were countless people who wanted to take Chu Hen's life. Killing and bloodshed happened almost every day. The Heaven Unified Dynasty, which suffered the most, was extremely furious. Of the 6 elite divisions that were sent to the 100 Nations region, 1 was completely annihilated, 3 were heavily injured, and the remaining 2 didn't dare to act rashly. Humiliation. Great humiliation. However, the Heaven Unified Dynasty didn't have the slightest intention of restraining themselves. Instead, they became even more aggressive. On the 3rd day after the incident, the strongest army consisting of 10 armies once again set out on the road to the 100 Nations region. 10 armies. A super strong army of 5 million. More than half of the resources that the Heaven Unified Dynasty had accumulated for thousands of years were taken out. At the same time, the imperial family also sent half of the experts at the Profound Sky realm to escort the army. Big move. Definitely a big move. This kind of lineup was enough to sweep through half of the victorious eastern region, let alone a mere 100 Nations region. Anyone could feel the anger of the Heaven Unified Dynasty's royal family. The Chu Hen, he must kill him. They must also wipe out the 100 Nations region. I want the 100 Lands region to be filled with rivers of blood and to cease to exist. Those who offend my empire, I want everything related to them to cease to exist. I want those who offend my empire to see how their birthplace is reduced to hell before they die. Those who offend me will have their entire family executed, and even 10 of their families will be considered a light punishment. 9 entire family executed. Even 10 would be considered light. This was the decree issued by the Emperor of the Heaven Unified Dynasty. The wrath of the Emperor, he wanted to raise the entire 100 Nations region to the ground as revenge for Chu Hen. Things are getting more and more serious. It seems like Lady Meng Shang's death had a huge impact on Chu Hen. In the deep and dark forest, Mu Feng, Hao Zi, Lung Lingyan, Long Xuanchuang, Yi Yao, and the rest of the small team from Mount Kunlu were also searching for Chu Hen's whereabouts. Because the situation was getting out of control, Long Xuanchuang had already ordered the Ice Profound Sex team to return to the sect first. She, on the other hand, chose to continue searching for Chu Hen's whereabouts with the rest of Mount Kuan-Lu. In less than a month, everyone was mentally and physically exhausted. Every day, they would rush between the major regions. Once they heard news about Chu Hen, they would immediately rush over, but they were always a step too late. I wonder how the sect master and the flying immortal palace lord are doing? Lung Lingyan softly murmured. Since Gong Yangyu and Qi Hanyu were faster than everyone else, they had already started moving by themselves. However, there had been no news in the past few days, causing everyone to feel uncertain. Little monkey, your brother Chu Hen summoned beast. Can you sense his location? Yi Yao bit her lower lip. Her eyes filled with melancholy as she looked at the little golden monkey squatting on Haozi's shoulder. Everyone looked at each other expectantly. However, the little monkey scratched its furry head and shook its head, indicating that it could not sense Chu Hen's location. The corner of Haozi's eyes narrowed, and he sighed helplessly. It will only sense when Chu Hen summons it. Even if Chu Hen uses the battle revolving 10,000 beast diagram, if he only summons other beasts, there's no way for us to sense it. He's already killed 1 million people. Is he going to be possessed? Mu Feng's usual playfulness was gone, and his brows were full of seriousness. If they had not seen it with their own eyes in the Xian Chastity region, they would never have believed that Chu Hen would go on a killing spree one day. Whoosh! Suddenly, Long Xuan stopped in her tracks, and her eyes shone brightly. Everyone was stunned. They stopped and turned around to look at each other. What's wrong, Miss Long? Lung Lingyan asked. Long Xuan looked up and said, I can think of 2 places that Chu Hen might have gone to. What? Where? Everyone's eyes lit up. The Immortal Pavilion and the Heavenly Cloud Manor. The Immortal Pavilion? The Heavenly Cloud Manor? The few of them were stunned at first. Then, Mu Feng and Haozi reacted first. They looked at each other and said in unison. Chapter 925. 7-Star Soul Pearl. Back when the Seven Souls Nation was destroyed, the 7-star soul pearls were divided among the invading sections 2 months before the ancient Desolate Heaven region opened. Chu Hen destroyed the Shura sect, the Illusory Rain sect, and the Otherworldly Spirits sect in the 100 Kingdoms province. From there, he obtained the Fekta, Mizar, and Migrez star beads. After that, during the battle in the Xian Kshetra sky region, Chu Hen killed the descendants of the Seven Souls Palace's imperial family and obtained the Alcade star bead again. In addition to the Dubby star bead that he possessed, Chu Hen now had 5 star beads in his hands. As long as he obtained the remaining Merak and Alioth, he would have a complete 7-star. The remaining 2 beads were in the Heavenly Cloud Manor and the Immortal Pavilion. Long Xuan deduced that Chu Hen would most likely go to these 2 places. The Immortal Pavilion is right in front. Lung Lingyan's reminder made everyone speed up. Swish, swish, swish. Many figures hurriedly shuttled through the forest. The Immortal Pavilion was built near the Demonic Beast mountain range. This sect's method of survival was relatively unorthodox. It used a special secret technique that no one knew of to graft the limbs of demonic beasts onto the human body, thereby strengthening the physical strength and combat strength of the body. Of course, the existence of anything meant that it was reasonable. The Immortal Pavilion had been in the Eastern Victory State for hundreds of years. Although it was unorthodox, it had always been peaceful. However, when the group from Mount Kumlia Mountain arrived at the Immortal Pavilion, the scene before them made everyone's hearts tremble. The huge manor was rather grand. The extravagance of the buildings and pagodas inside was not inferior to some of the higher-level sections. However, this place that was comparable to a palace in an imperial city was currently filled with corpses. The blood that flowed on the ground gathered into small streams. All kinds of scales, claws, beast arms, eagle wings, and other broken limbs were scattered on the ground. Everyone shook their heads. Rather than saying that a fierce fight had broken out here, it would be better to say that a one-sided, brutal massacre had taken place. Let's go in and take a look, said Shanjin solemnly. Before he finished speaking, Yi Yao, Long Xuan, Haozi, and the others had already charged into the inner region of the Immortal Pavilion. Chu Hen, whom they hoped to see, hadn't left yet. However, The scene inside could only be described as horrifying. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single living person to be found. Housie and Mu Feng looked at each other and sighed helplessly. Looks like we're a step too late. Only Skycloud Manor is left. Everyone looked at Lung Lingyan, obviously asking for the location of the Heavenly Cloud Manor. Lung Lingyan frowned slightly, and her expression was slightly solemn. The fastest way to the Heavenly Cloud Manor is through the Tiantong dynasty. What? Everyone was shocked in their hearts, and a bad premonition surged into their hearts. Greater East State was in chaos. All the sects and forces fell into an unprecedentedly tense atmosphere. Other than the whereabouts of Chu Hen, everyone was also concerned about the situation of the 5 million elites sent by the Tiantong dynasty. After all, the previous 6 armies had not even left the gates of the Greater East State, and nearly 1 million of them had already been killed. If something happened to those 5 million elites, then the Tiantong dynasty would truly suffer a heavy loss this time. Learn from the mistakes of the past. The Tiantong dynasty had sent out many experts to protect them, afraid that Chu Hen would not come. In a dazzling and luxurious imperial hall, there was a 5-clawed golden dragon engraved on the pillars, a flight of stairs made of gold, as well as a supreme dragon throne. All sorts of symbols of power had created the Tiantong dynasty's 1,000 years of greatness. When will our armored cavalry trample through that barbarian land? Directly above the throne room, a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe and a dragon crown on his head shouted at the court officials below. His eyes were like torches. This person was none other than the ruler of the Tiantong dynasty, Xiao Zong. Your Majesty, a treacherous official respectfully replied, according to the messenger, General Zhao and the others have already arrived at the Great Yuan Mountain. And at most 5 days, they will be able to step into the 100 Nation state. Why do we need 5 days? Xiao Zhang's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. Your Majesty, please calm down. The 5 million army is a large number. It is inevitable that there will be some bumps along the way. Pass down our decree. Anyone who delays military orders will be beheaded. Give Zhao Si 3 days to reach the 100 Nation state. After that, we must exterminate all the barbarians in the 100 Nation state. A thick, majestic aura swept out from Xiao Zhang's body. Anyone could feel the other party's anger and killing intent. Ever since Xiao Zong came to power, this was the first time the officials had seen the other party so angry. Your Majesty, please be at ease. In less than a month, there will no longer be a 100 Nation state in this world. That's right. When our Heaven's Empire's cavalry descends south, we will definitely turn that barbarian land into a river of blood. Not even the fowls and dogs will be spared to show our empire's might. Those who offend our empire's might will pay a price that is 10 million times greater. Killing 9 clans was a small matter, and killing 10 clans was also a small matter. In everyone's mind, the tragic scene of the 100 Nation state being plunged into misery and suffering, with corpses piling up into a mountain, appeared. Xiao Zong placed his hands behind his back, and a trace of a cold smile appeared on his face. A general success was built on 10,000 corpses. After the 100 Nation state was bathed in blood, who would dare to provoke the Heaven's Empire? Rumble. However, at this moment, an earth-shattering sound came from outside the hall. Everyone was shocked, but before they could react, 2 old men with piercingly cold auras instantly flashed to Xiao Zhang's side. Your Majesty, be careful. Bang. As soon as they finished speaking, an earth-shattering sword ray that emitted a boundless, terrifying aura slashed down with the force of splitting a mountain. The dazzling and resplendent sword light was like a divine blade that could split the heavens. It directly split the entire throne room into 2. Large and small rocks exploded. The divine blade-like sword ray poured out, and wherever it went, the bricks and tiles cracked, the walls were cut, and a huge ravine appeared on the floor of the hall. More than 10 civil and military officials who could not dodge in time were directly cut in half by this merciless sword ray. Xiao Zong, under the protection of 2 imperial experts, quickly retreated from the collapsed hall. The sky darkened, and rocks flew everywhere. Miserable wails and screams filled the air. Before the many experts and guards could react to what happened, a soaring roar of demonic beasts resounded throughout the world. Roar, screech. Huge beasts with frightening, ferocious auras appeared out of nowhere in the Heavens Empire's imperial city. Those that flew in the sky and those that ran on the ground were like meteorites that fell from the sky, smashing holes one after another and destroying luxurious buildings one after another. Countless palaces were turned into ruins, and many guards were trampled to death. In an instant, the entire imperial city fell into unprecedented chaos. All kinds of chaotic shockwaves swept in all directions, wantonly launching attacks. In the sky above the golden imperial hall that was split in half by a sword ray, a cold figure that emitted endless sharpness coldly looked at the ground, and the green holy sword in his hand was surrounded by ripples of energy. Then, that sharp sword-like gaze directly shot toward Xiao Zong. This was a confrontation between a commoner and an emperor. However, as an emperor, the moment Xiao Zong met the other party's gaze, all of his supreme prestige collapsed. An indescribable fear surged like a tide. Chapter 926. Buzz. Chaotic waves of energy engulfed the inside and outside of the imperial palace. Dust filled the sky and the earth trembled. Huge demonic beasts wreaked havoc, setting off waves of flames and smoke. The throne room was slashed open by a sword, and many of the civil and military officials died on the spot. Xiao Zhang's eyes involuntarily trembled when he saw the young figure standing in the sky. He clenched his fists and subconsciously cried out in a cold voice, "It's you," even though he had never seen him before. Today was the first time they met, but Xiao Zong was very sure that the young man in front of him was the Chu Hen who caused chaos in the victorious Eastern Province. Surprise. A huge surprise. No one present would have thought that Chu Hen would actually dare to kill his way into the imperial palace of the Heaven Empire. What an arrogant bastard. How dare he barge into this place? The one who spoke was one of the old men protecting Xiao Zong. His eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. The other old man also frowned and revealed a frosty expression. As he looked at the ferocious giant beasts, the cold light in his eyes grew even colder. He said in a low voice, "I'm afraid this brat has come prepared. Don't be too careless. Who cares if he came prepared or not? Today, I will make sure that he won't be able to return." Whoosh! The heavy iron weapon let out a light sound in the air. The old man who spoke first put his right hand behind his back, and suddenly, a flying wheel with 3 leaves appeared in his hand. The center of the flying wheel was empty, and the 3 leaves were in a spiral shape. They were incomparably sharp and flickered with a dark blue poisonous light. Killing intent filled the air, and waves of energy stacked up. Chu Hen looked at the people below. His indifferent voice seemed to cause ripples in the air. "It seems that slaughtering 1,000,000 of your troops did not teach you how to restrain yourselves. Slaughtering the enemy's elite troops seemed to be a warning to the Heaven Empire. However, they ignored this warning and became even more aggressive. They directly sent an additional 5,000,000 troops to the 100 Nations province. At this very moment, Chu Hen had directly killed his way into the imperial family of the imperial capital with an earth-shattering momentum. The expressions of everyone couldn't help but change, and at the moment of their rage, the corners of Xiao Zong's eyes squinted as well as he berated in a low voice. "Audacious thief, you're simply courting death. Kill him." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man with the 3-leaf flywheel on his back released a powerful killing intent and said to the other old man, "Elder Shi, protect his majesty. Let me end this bastard's life." Buzz! After saying that, the old man leaped up and set off a strong gust of wind towards Chu Hen. "Insolent thief! I'm the supreme elder of the dynasty, Xinglin. Today, I'll make sure you die under my 3 ferocious wheels. Wheel of punishment." He was a top-notch expert who could be ranked in the entire Dongxing region. His strength had already reached the 6th level of the sky, profound realm. The Wheel of 3 Fierce Beasts was ranked 11th on the Saint Weapon ranking. With the power of this sacred weapon, Xing Luan's battle prowess was definitely terrifying. Xiao. When he was less than 100 meters away from Chu Hen, Xing Luan directly threw out the wheel of 3 fierce beasts in his hand. It pierced through the air like the divine wheel of wind and fire, and it had an extremely destructive aura. It dragged a series of afterimages in the air, and its speed was as fast as lightning as it slashed diagonally towards Chu Hen's chest. It seemed as if it wanted to kill him with a single strike. Facing such a threatening attack, Chu Hen's expression was still calm. He raised the blue sky sword in his hand, and the tip of the sword directly avoided the tip of the wheel and accurately hit the side of one of the blades. Ding! The wheel of 3 fierce beasts was instantly repelled. However, in the next instant, Elder Xing Luan flicked his wrist with a cold smile, and another swift and fierce flying wheel shot out explosively. The corners of Chu Hen's eyes narrowed, and he flipped his hand and repelled the second wheel with a backhand strike. Sparks flew everywhere, and true origin rained down. Then the third, the fourth, the fifth wheel. The wheel quickly slashed out from Xing Luan's palm. In an instant, more than a dozen flying wheels flickering with the light of death swept towards Chu Hen like a divine wheel that could take his life. The airflow between the two became especially restless and chaotic. Ding, ding, ding. Chu Hen's eyes were like torches, and his sword moved according to his will. A series of sword phantom flickered in the air, continuously repelling the flying wheels that were flying towards him. His calm and unruffled face gave people a feeling that they couldn't see through him and couldn't see through him. Ding! When the last flying wheel was repelled by Chu Hen, a cold and gloomy wind suddenly attacked from behind. Whoosh! Like a ghost, the afterimages floated, and Xing Luan, who was in front of Chu Hen a second ago, suddenly appeared behind him. In this world, it's not only your blue sky sword that has the ability to speed up. Go to hell. Trash. Xing Luan's wrinkled old face revealed a sinister smile. Whoosh! Accompanied by the sound of air being torn apart, the withered old hand held a sharp flying wheel and directly slashed towards Chu Hen's neck. It was a matter of life and death. There was no way to avoid it. Below, Shout Song, Elder Shi, and the others from the Heaven Unified Dynasty all revealed cold expressions. That damn thing had finally come to an end. Hiss! The sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh assaulted the eardrums of everyone present. Fresh blood blossomed behind Chu Hen's back and danced. Everyone's pupils constricted, but they saw that Chu Hen didn't even turn his head, and his back was facing Xing Luan. Chu Hen clenched his hands and used a sword-sheathing technique to directly stab the blue sky sword into Xing Luan's abdomen. Chi. Violent black lightning covered the holy sword and entered Xing Luan's body, paralyzing the opponent's meridians and limbs. As a result, the sharp flying wheel in Xing Luan's hand stopped in the air before it could reach Chu Hen's neck. It was a clean and efficient sword strike, and an extremely bold sword. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them and didn't know what to do. It was as if Chu Hen already knew that Xing Luan would flash behind him. He didn't even wait for the opponent to make a move and had already stabbed the sword into Xing Luan's body. This guy, Elder Shi clenched his fists with eyes full of hatred. Even though he was struck by Chu Hen's sword, Xing Luan, as the supreme elder of the Heaven's Unified Dynasty, was not an ordinary person. He immediately steadied his mind, and a vast amount of true essence surged out. Then his palm covered in dense light firmly grasped the blade of the blue sky sword, and he forcibly retreated. Hiss! Blood gushed out from his abdomen. Damn it! Xing Luan's eyes were wide open as he gritted his teeth. He didn't care about his injuries and immediately retreated 100 meters away. Then he raised his arms, and along with his soaring power, countless flying wheels flew out from his body like wind blades. Divine wheel blood formation. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of the rapid, piercing wind filled the sky and covered the earth. The densely packed flywheels drew lines of beautiful arcs in the air, then attacked Chu Hen from different angles. Chu Hen dragged his sword and released a series of floating light sword shadows. With regards to the screen images that filled the sky, he acted as if they were nothing. With a flick of his sword, his figure flashed like a ghost, making it difficult for the naked eye to follow him. What was this guy's cultivation? The people of the Heaven Unified Dynasty were even more shocked. At the Xianshao firmament region, it was speculated that he was at the third rank of the Sky Profound Realm. Then, after the Thunder Saint Palace's Elder Lay One was killed, it was speculated that he was at the fourth rank of the Sky Profound Realm. But now, even Xinglin, who was at the sixth rank of the Sky Profound Realm, was almost killed. Every time Chu Hen appeared, people would overturn their previous speculations. Roar! Roar! The demon beast continued to wreak havoc. The situation in the Imperial Palace was getting more and more chaotic. Xiao Zhang's mood became a lot more anxious. He had sent more than half of the Imperial family's experts to the 100 Nations Prefecture to escort the 5 million troops. And now, the people that were left behind were already unable to block the attacks brought by Chu Hen. Distant water could not put out a nearby fire. The power had been separated, and now the Imperial Palace was in danger. Looking at the palace buildings being trampled and the courtyards being razed to the ground, Xiao Zhang's anger rose as he gnashed his teeth. Elder Shi, who was at the side, also knew that Elder Xinglun alone would not be able to defeat Chu Hen. His expression sank as he shouted to the guards behind him, "Protect His Majesty. If His Majesty loses even a single hair, all of you will be beheaded." Yes. Roar. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge crocodile covered in thorny back armor broke through the palace wall and pounced toward Xiaozong. Its huge mouth opened wide, and a bloody smell came out. "Oomph! Impudent beast!" Elder She snorted coldly, then leaped up and landed steadily on the back of the huge crocodile. Then he clenched his fists and stepped forward in a horse stance. With a deep voice, he shouted, "1,000 catty fall." Buzz, the sudden burst of power was comparable to the pressure of Mount Tai. A circle of brown light spread out from under Elder Shi's feet. Crack! The sound of bones breaking was extremely clear. The huge crocodile's huge body bent into a bow shape and then fell heavily to the ground. Its scales cracked, and its internal organs were smashed, creating a huge pit on the ground. Elder Shi did not look at the huge crocodile's corpse. Once again, he raised a monstrous flame and rushed towards Chu Hen. Rhino God Force. Buzz, a vast amount of true essence surrounded Elder Shi's body like a storm, and the airflow above the entire Imperial City became particularly restless. Moo! The roar of a bull and a beast resounded through the sky. Immediately, a phantom of a huge golden rhinoceros appeared outside Elder Shi's body, like a divine beast of heaven and earth. The huge golden rhinoceros burst out with an aura that directly suppressed all the beasts present. Whether it was its strength or speed, it was especially shocking. Elder Shi, who was surrounded by the phantom of the giant rhinoceros, aggressively rushed towards Chu Hen in the sky. "Xinglun," he shouted loudly. "I know." Xinglun understood tacitly, and his face revealed a touch of ruthlessness. Buzz! Buzz! Xinglun stood up with one hand, and a steady stream of red light poured into the sky. At the same time, the flying wheels that filled the sky quickly gathered in his hand. The air waves that stirred up the sky whistled in all directions. In an instant, a flywheel that was rotating at a high speed appeared in the sky. Substantial flames burned, and the diameter of the flying wheel continued to increase. Looking from afar, Xinglun was holding a huge wheel of wind and fire. Once one was entangled in it, there would be no corpse left. Let's see where you can escape this time. Die. Chapter 927. Rhino God Force. Ominous Wheel Calamity. The extremely majestic and ferocious aura made the sky above the capital city uneasy. Below, a giant golden rhinoceros that looked like an ancient divine beast charged at Chu Hen with the momentum of hitting the sky. Its aura soared into the sky like a mountain. Above, Elder Xinglun held a mighty windfire wheel in his hand, stirring up the airflow in all directions. He dragged the wheel of 3 calamities with one hand, and the wheel surrounded by endless death and bloody glow was thrown out like a divine disk. It swept up a dense destructive aura and shot toward Chuhan. Giant rhinoceros, ominous with one at the front, one at the back, one at the top, and one at the bottom, they launched the most ferocious pincer attack at Chuhan in the air. The golden beast silhouette covered the sky, and the wheel of three calamities left a scorching fire pillar in the air. At that moment, Chu Hen felt like he was under the joint attack of two meteorites. The terrifying pressure came from all directions, and he could not dodge at all, die. The Emperor of Heaven Dynasty, Shaozong, clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes were as sharp as arrows. Everyone else in the imperial capital had cold expressions on their faces. At this moment, the turmoil in so many provinces was finally coming to an end. Facing the joint attack of the two supreme elders, Chu Hen's handsome face was still calm. Whoosh! The space trembled slightly, and his pitch-black eyes instantly turned demonic purple. At the same time, a dense and manic black glow quickly flowed out like the mysterious flame from hell. Hiss! An extremely heavy and earth-shattering sound reverberated in the sky. The golden-colored rhinoceros that was as large as a mountain and the wind-fire wheel that shook the earth were like two meteorites that unexpectedly met from outer space. They firmly collided and attacked Chu Hen's location. An unprecedented energy storm swept out in the sky above the capital city. Waves of dazzling, true essence swept out in all directions, accompanied by the purple flames that shot up into the sky, as well as the chaotic black light. The sky lost its color, and the nine heavens dimmed. The different-colored aura blended together, and the wantonly splashing light pillars were comparable to sharp swords that pierced through the air. The palaces and buildings below were smashed into smithereens. Roar! Boom! Tens of thousands of thunder rumbled in the sky, and the beast below roared. The heart-palpitating power caused the entire imperial capital of the Heaven Unified Dynasty to sink into an incomparably tense atmosphere. Whether it was inside or outside the palace, countless pairs of heavy eyes stared at the center of the energy storm. Even the vast victorious Dongzhou region, the number of people who could survive the full blow of two peak experts at the 6th level of the Sky Profound Realm could be counted on one hand. He's still not dead. Oomph. You're courting death by barging into our territory. Bang! But at this moment, an incomparably ferocious black halo spread out like ripples on the surface of water. All the chaotic power was directly pushed back, and a young figure that was as cold as a frost blade appeared in everyone's line of sight, without much damage. What? How could this be? Everyone's faces turned pale with fright. Is this guy a monster? In less than a month's time, how could Chu Hen's cultivation increase so terrifyingly? Without any time to think, a cold sword aura suddenly spread out. Chu Hen turned into a beam of light and instantly disappeared from where he stood. In the void below, Elder Shi, who was in the shadow of a golden rhinoceros, suddenly had a change of expression. He then shouted, "Xinglin, be careful, be careful." Just as he finished speaking, an irresistible and powerful sword aura enveloped Xinglun. Xinglun was shocked. This feeling was as if he was locked in a fixed narrow area, and the invisible pressure caused the blood flow in his body to slow down. Not good. An extremely bad premonition surged in his heart, and Xinglun immediately released all of his true inner force to attack. But in the next second, a voice that was as cold as the Grim Reaper's was transmitted to his ears. Flying immortal sword. In an instant, more than a dozen cold and emotionless humanoid sword auras appeared around Xinglun. They were like ghosts, and they were incomparably sharp. Xinglun's expression changed drastically, and an unprecedented fear surged in his old eyes. Immediately after, the scene that happened to Lei Mingho in the Xian Chastity region appeared again. More than a dozen humanoid sword auras rapidly passed through Xinglun's body. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A sharp sound stacked up in the sky, and when the last humanoid sword aura flashed across the sky, Xinglun's old body was split into several pieces under countless shocked gazes. Blood rained down, and internal organs flew everywhere. Cold, emotionless, austere, and neat. Rumble. Seeing this scene, everyone from the Heaven Dynasty felt as if a thunderbolt had exploded in their minds. Especially the emperor of a country, Xiao Zong, who was not dignified at all. His entire face was ashen. Even the supreme elder who was responsible for protecting him was killed here. Xiao Zong really did not know how to block Chu Hen's sword. Damn it, elder, she was furious, and his eyes were almost spitting fire. You really deserve to die, moo. Immediately after, all of the aura of the 6th level of the sky profound realm burst out from Elder Shi's body without holding back. The giant rhinoceros shadow that enveloped his body became even more solid. Its thick leather armor flickered with golden light, and the rhinoceros horn at its front was like a sharp blade that could split the heavens. Under his rage, Elder Shi did not hold back at all. The giant rhinoceros stepped on the air, stepping on golden flames, and charged towards Chu Hen with its strongest power. Chu Hen, who was above the rhinoceros, did not dodge. Instead, he dived down like a dragon diving into the sea, directly pouncing towards the opponent. If it was before, in the eyes of countless people, Chu Hen's actions were no different from courting death. However, after personally witnessing Xing Luan's death, no one dared to underestimate this young man. Buzz buzz. At the same time that he dived down, Chu Hen raised his left palm. Countless beams of starlight flowed out of his body and rapidly coiled around him, rapidly converging at the center of his palm. The astonishing manic energy caused the space to become uneasy, and the extremely dense starlight energy floated around Chu Hen's body. Subsequently, the light screen of the Big Dipper pattern appeared in Chu Hen's palm. Among them, only one of the stars was relatively dim, while the other 6 stars were shining with a brilliant holy light. Buzz buzz, controlling the heavens, shaking the 9 heavens. Endless starlight rapidly pulsed in Chu Hen's palm, and an arc-shaped light screen dragged from the front to the back. The distance between the two was instantly reduced to 0. The palm, which was comparable to a falling star, landed solidly on the giant golden rhinoceros's huge head. Star Soul 6 critical strike. 6 critical strikes. Bang! Along with an intense explosion, a circle of silver starlight rippled in the void, and the space distorted as though it was about to split open. The power that gathered from the 6-star soul pearls exploded. In an instant, the terrifying power of the collision was like a meteorite crashing into a raging tsunami. The universe lost its color. The starlight that filled the sky was like a rain of sparks. The huge golden rhinoceros was like a mountain that was being battered by a river of stars. Chu Hen, with the force of pushing a mountain, crazily fell from the sky along with Elder Shi. Rumble. The earth exploded, mountains and rivers flowed, and stars fell from the sky. The moment the giant golden rhinoceros landed, the terrifying power of the 7 stars surged down, and the giant rhinoceros shadow directly exploded into pieces. Elder, she was greatly shocked. Xiao Zong and everyone else from the Heaven Unified Dynasty felt as though it was the end of the world. Clang. A destructive power that was more terrifying than any of the previous attacks fused into the earth, and a disaster unstoppably engulfed the imperial capital of the Heaven Unified Dynasty. Elder Shi, who had lost his defense, was so enraged that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He was directly smashed into smithereens by the violent power of the 7 stars. He did not even have the time to be shocked and angry. The wanton and violent power swept across the ground in all directions, causing the earth to split open and layers of rocks to break. Like a storm of death, the ground quickly expanded into a huge crater, and the starlight shockwave spread in all directions. Everywhere it went, all the buildings were destroyed, and all the imperial guards were killed. Flying rocks piled up, and the heaven and earth shook. Sovereign King Xiao Zong was extremely afraid, and his eyes were wide open as he hysterically shouted, "No!" The footsteps of the Grim Reaper arrived. Chapter 928. Rumble. The earth split open, and the earth exploded. The six-star soul critical strike gathered the terrifying power of the six-star soul pearls and struck the imperial city of the Heaven Unified Dynasty. The unstoppable storm of death was like the exploding star radiant Sunday. The ground shattered layer by layer, breaking apart inch by inch. Countless rocks surged into the air. An incomparably violent shock wave wantonly swept in all directions, and a huge sinkhole rapidly expanded. Elder, she was instantly smashed into pieces by this powerful shockwave. And the ruler of a country, Shout Song, was also smashed into pieces by the chaotic shockwave amidst a wave of fear and anguish. In an instant, the entire imperial city was filled with panic screams. The tall and imposing city walls were like a dam that had been broken by a flood. Many people outside the city were also sent flying back, trembling with fear. Hiss! Heavens, his majesty has died. Rumble! It was as if there was a thunderclap in the sky above the imperial capital. Dust filled the sky, and the prosperity fell. The imperial power of a generation had fallen here, and now... Roar! Ayo! All the beasts in the city roared towards the sky, as if they were announcing their victory, but also as if they were singing a dirge for this fallen dynasty. The sky darkened, and the earth became dark. The imperial city fell into an unprecedented chaos. The citizens in the city fled in all directions. The palace guards were killed and injured. Even the experts of the great clans in the city that relied on the imperial power could only be furious, but did not dare to encircle the thief. Too terrifying, too shocking. With just a flip of his hand, the entire imperial city was razed to the ground. The man named Chu Hen had once again refreshed everyone's bottom line. A single person destroyed an entire dynasty. Moreover, this dynasty was one of the top 10 powers in the province region. There is no one who wasn't shocked, no one who wasn't angry, and no one's heart wasn't trembling. Whoosh! The cold wind whistled in the sky, and more than half of the imperial city was completely reduced to ruins. Chu Hen stood in the sky, and all the beasts surrounded him like loyal guards. Go! Without any intention of stopping, Chu Hen flashed and landed on the back of a giant eagle demon bird. The latter let out a loud cry, then flapped its wings and turned into a stream of light as it flew in one direction. Roar! Roar! The rest of the beasts also follow behind. The majestic group was like an unstoppable giant cavalry. Many of the buildings in the imperial city were trampled into nothingness. The crowd at the front did not dare to stop them. They quickly scattered and retreated, opening up a path. They could only watch as Chu Hen's figure disappeared into the horizon of the imperial city. After a short period of dead silence, the palace was filled with sobs and sorrowful cries. A dignified emperor of a dynasty was killed in his own palace. This was a great tragedy. The higher-ups of the various clans in the city all had mixed feelings in their hearts. There was anger and fear, but most of all, there was a deep sense of helplessness. They could only watch helplessly as their king perished without being able to save him in time. It wasn't that they didn't want to protect their master. They really did not have the ability. They did not even have the courage to fight to the death with Chu Hen. After all, even the two supreme elders with the strongest cultivation had died so tragically. The others were just adding to the casualties. Hee hee, what a joke. The dynasty is gone just like that. A clan leader of a certain clan had a bitter smile on his face. This is really unexpected. The Victory East region is really going to undergo a huge change. It's not a change of weather. It's going to be chaos. From today onwards, there will no longer be a Tian Tong dynasty among the top 10 powers in the province region. In just a few days, the victorious Dong province once again experienced a landslide and tsunami because of the fall of the Tian Tong dynasty's royal family. When this news came out, it was like a resounding slap on the faces of the sects that were chasing after Chu Hen. The world had yet to recover from the shock of Chu Hen massacring millions of people. As one of the top 10 powers, the Tian Tong dynasty had already been wiped out by Chu Hen. The emperor of the dynasty, two supreme elders at the 6th level of the sky profound realm, and many experts and guards. all lost their lives at the hands of Chu Hen. This heavy blow had mercilessly kicked the Heaven Imperial dynasty out of the top 10 in the prefecture region. Perhaps it would even be destroyed in the future. Previously, the 5 million elites sent by the dynasty had just reached the borders of the 100 Nations province. They did not even have the time to cause a bloodbath when the news of the dynasty's destruction made them unable to stand steadily. It was as if Mount Tai had collapsed in front of them. The sky had darkened. Some people said that they wanted to wash the 100 Nations province in blood to avenge their king. However, with Xiao Zhang's death, the group was leaderless. Even if they washed the 100 Nations province in blood, who would be the ones with the battle merits? Who would be the commander? After this, where would they go? Similarly, what if Chu Hen came back? What would they do? Xiao Zhang's death caused the entire Tiantong dynasty to fall into chaos. More and more people began to think about the future. Some wanted to support the crown prince to ascend the throne. Some wanted to leave the dynasty to avoid Chu Hen's revenge in the future, and some wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to wield power. All kinds of contradictions were aroused. The 5 million elites did not stay in the 100 Nations province for even a day and hurriedly returned to the capital. All the feudal vassals were in danger. The ambitious ones were exposed, and the timid ones stayed far away from the capital. In less than half a month, the Tiantong dynasty was filled with endless civil wars. Outsiders only knew that the day this superpower, which was once in the top 10, completely disappeared was not far away. The culprit, who caused all of this? What kind of shocking storm would he create next? The destruction of the Tiantong dynasty had caused all kinds of chain reactions. The number of people chasing after Chu Hen had obviously decreased. Even the Taiqing sect had withdrawn a few orders to kill him. In the Battle of the Xian Chakra Firmament region, the Taiqing sect's losses were not small. Lu Tao, Li Fengqing, and many other genius disciples were killed. Third elderly Xiao also died tragically. But the huge changes that happened these days forced the Taiqing sect to re-examine the current situation. After all, compared to the Tiantong dynasty, the overall strength of the Taiqing sect was not that strong. Chu Hen's strength had already caused fear and attention that could not be ignored. However, if they just cowered like this, they would definitely lose face. After a few days of struggle, the news that the heavenly cloud manor was almost annihilated spread again. The Taiqing sect finally realized that it was best not to continue provoking a ruthless character like Chu Hen. I didn't expect that old turtle Luo Songsong to actually lower his head. In a spacious and bright hall in the Wuwang Valley, an imposing middle-aged man wearing a gorgeous robe had a cold look in his eyes. At the same time, the teacup in his hand shattered and turned into powder. The expressions of the people in front of him changed slightly, revealing respectful and fearful expressions. This middle-aged man was none other than the Valley Master of the Wuwang Valley, Shinachongkong. What about the Thunder Saint Palace? Shinachongkong asked coldly. Reporting to the Valley Master, the Thunder Saint Palace has already issued an order to flatten Mount Kunliu tomorrow noon. Shinachongkong sneered. Looks like after not being able to kill Chu Hen for so long, the Thunder Saint Palace was starting to feel a little embarrassed. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound. First, he would raise Mount Kunliu to the ground and use the might of the Thunder Saint Palace to suppress Chu Hen. This was indeed the Thunder Saint Palace's style of doing things. Pass down this Valley Master's order, send a group of people to Mount Kunliu. Everyone was startled, and one of them said, "Does the Valley Master also want to?" Shinachongkong's face revealed a sinister look as killing intent surged in his eyes. That bastard killed my son. If I don't take revenge for this blood debt, it will be hard for me to vent the hatred in my heart. Mount Kunliu is a place of filth, so I will definitely make sure that not even the fowls and dogs are spared. Endless hatred and killing intent filled Shinachongkong's entire face. Chapter 9:29. As the Heaven Unified Dynasty fell into the crisis of destruction, not long after, the news that the Heavenly Cloud Manor was almost annihilated also came out. Although the people in the outside world did not know why Chu Hen would seek out the Immortal Pavilion and the Heavenly Cloud Manor, these two fourth-rate sects. It was undeniable that Chu Hen's ruthlessness had already caused countless people in the entire victorious eastern state to tremble in fear. The best proof was that the Tai Ching sect had completely withdrawn the order to hunt down and kill Chu Hen. However, the Thunder Saint Palace and the Innocence Valley were becoming more and more aggressive. As one of the three great sects in the prefecture, the Thunder Saint Palace would definitely not give up. After waiting for so many years, two monstrous geniuses with the Saint bloodline, Lei Mingho and Lei Jixin, appeared. Who would have thought that one would die tragically and the other would be humiliated? In the past 1,000 years, the Thunder Saint Palace had never suffered such humiliation. It could be said that as long as Chu Hen did not die, the Thunder Saint Palace would not let the matter rest. As for the Innocence Valley, it was also impossible for them to stop. The young master, Shintu Etian, was the only son of the Valley Master, Shinachongkong. If they did not kill Chu Hen, the Innocence Valley would not be able to take this lying down. However, every time Chu Hen caused a massacre, he would be able to escape successfully. From Lei One, the elders of the Innocence Valley, to the two powerful supreme elders of the Heaven Dynasty, every time Chu Hen appeared, the sects would have a new evaluation of his cultivation level. In the beginning, the people sent out by the sects could be said to be weak. For example, Lei One, who was the first to track down Chu Hen, was at the 4th level of the Profound Sky Realm. After that, the 3 elders sent out by the Innocence Valley were all top figures of the upper echelons. After that, the various large sects jointly issued a bounty order, which directly made Chu Hen become the public enemy. However, even with such a lineup, they could not do anything to Chu Hen. His cultivation level had grown so much in just over a month that it was terrifying. From killing Lei One, who was at the 4th level of the Sky Profound Realm, to killing 2 supreme elders who were at the 6th level of the Sky Profound Realm. The world was finding it harder and harder to see through Chu Hen. It was getting harder and harder to figure out the other party's background. In the eyes of the people of the victorious East State, Chu Hen had become extremely mysterious. Even before the ancient desolate heaven domain opened, that name was still unknown. Was the other party not simple to begin with? Or had he obtained a great opportunity in the ancient desolate heaven domain? He didn't know any of this. The order to kill Chu Hen continued to tug at everyone's heartstrings. At the same time, Mount Kunliu was faced with a critical moment of desperation. Boom! Bang! Layer after layer of ripple-like radiance surged in the sky above Mount Kunliu. Every muffled impact caused the space to vibrate restlessly. The illusory light barrier that enveloped the sect was continuously being fiercely attacked by external forces. People of Mount Kunliu, listen up. If you obediently surrender, I'll leave your corpses intact. Otherwise, everyone's fates will be incomparably miserable. Lowly ants, come out and die. I will let you know that the price of offending my Thunder Saint Palace is not something you can bear. Mocking voices filled with disdain came from outside the sect protecting formation. The people in Mount Kunliu could be said to be both shocked and angry. They were both angry and anxious. These bullies are too much. Let's go out and fight them. A disciple cursed impulsively. Stop joking. That's the Thunder Saint Palace and the Innocence Valley. We'll die no matter how many of us go out. Then what should we do? The sect protecting formation can only last for another 5 minutes. Once the defensive formation breaks, we'll still be dead. At this moment, Mount Kunliu's senior elders, demon-slaying Palace Master Wen Liang, and Void Palace Master Xia Wuhe hurriedly rushed out of the conference hall. All disciples, follow us to the back mountain immediately, Wen Liang said solemnly. Everyone was stunned at first, then looked at each other in confusion. Xia Wuhe immediately opened his mouth to explain. When our ancestors first established Mount Kunliu, they set up a transfer channel in the back mountain, so that when the sect faced a life and death situation, we would have a chance of survival. As the saying goes, a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. Any sect or faction would build an escape route at the very beginning. However, this also meant that they would have to abandon Mount Kunliu's thousands of years of foundation. Let's go. Without any delay, the disciples of Mount Kunliu immediately followed Wen Liang, Xia Wuhe, and the other senior members to the back mountain. Soon, they arrived at a vast mountain stream. The mountain walls on both sides were very steep and jagged. In the center of the mountain stream, there was a lake over 1,000 meters wide. The lake water was clear and lush with aquatic plants. Although it was a beautiful scene, no one was in the mood to enjoy it at this time. Old Xia, demon-slaying hall master Wen Liang shouted in a low voice. Xia Wuhe understood tacitly and nodded his head. Buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them flew up, one on the left and one on the right, and flew towards the east and west sides of the lake respectively. A vast and surging true origin energy was released from the two of them. The two of them made a series of complicated hand seals in quick succession. The space fluctuated rhythmically, and ripples appeared on the surface of the lake below. When the last hand sign was completed, the two of them pointed one hand down at the same time and firmly slapped the air. Buzz. In an instant, countless unfathomable talisman markings actually spread out on the surface of the water below. The crisscrossing bright light patterns were like interweaving spiritual vines, as if an ancient formation that had been dormant for many years had been activated. Tens of thousands of bright light rays were released from the surface of the water. Whoosh! Waves piled up, and a huge whirlpool immediately formed under the water. Under the surprised gazes of the disciples of Mount Kunliu, a transportation tunnel with a diameter of 100 meters immediately appeared inside the whirlpool. Inside the pitch-black tunnel, there was a flickering light. It was like a mysterious tunnel that led to another space. Bang! Bang! Heavy sounds of impact could be heard coming from the direction they came from. These reverberations were like a heavy hammer pounding on the hearts of everyone on Mount Kunliu. Damn it! Wen Liang cursed in a deep voice. Xia Wuhe hurriedly signaled the crowd to leave. Quick! Everyone enter the underwater transportation tunnel. Hall Master, you guys leave first. A few hot-blooded disciples hurriedly said. Don't talk nonsense. There's not much time. Looking at Wen Liang and Xia Wuhe's serious expressions, everyone's eyes unconsciously turned red. They immediately gritted their teeth and jumped into the water whirlpool. Everyone was orderly, like a school of fish entering the sea, and in the blink of an eye, disappeared into the transportation tunnel. Boom! Almost at the same time, an unprecedented heavy sound reverberated in the sky above the area behind them, resounding through the sky. Wen Liang and Xia Wuhe's faces suddenly turned pale. A strong sense of danger enveloped them. Chapter 9:30. Bang! An earth-shattering sound came from the area in front of the sect. Wen Liang, Xia Wuhe, and the rest of Mount Kunliu's disciples paled as a strong sense of danger enveloped them. Damn it! The sect's defensive formation had been broken. What should we do? The Mount Kunliu's disciples were flustered. Demon Slayer Palace Master Wen Liang waved his hand, frowned, and said in a deep voice, "You don't have to worry about it. Just evacuate." After he finished speaking, he exchanged a glance with Xia Wuhe, the Void Temple Master, and the two of them nodded deeply. A solemn and stirring feeling arose from the two of them. Old Xia, you should leave too. I alone am enough, Wen Liang said with his head held high. Ha! Xia Wuhe sneered, a hint of contempt appearing at the corner of his mouth. I say, Wen Liang, you think too highly of yourself. If you were alone, I'm afraid you'd be killed in a single move by the people from Thunder Saint Palace. How good can you be? You'll only hinder me if you're by my side. Even though they spoke in a mocking tone, there was no hint of disdain. As they listened to the conversation between the two, the hearts of the elders and disciples of Mount Kunliu shuddered involuntarily. It was obvious that Xia Wuhe and Wen Liang had decided to delay the Thunder Saint Palace and Wuwang Valley to buy some time for them to evacuate. Palace Master, you can't. An elder hurriedly dissuaded. Before the elder could finish, Wen Liang raised his hand and stopped him. Don't say any more. We're facing a great enemy. How can we not step forward bravely? As long as we protect these juniors, there's hope for Mount Kunliu's future. This is also the only thing we can do for Sect Master Gongyan. Then, Wen Liang turned to Xia Wuhe and said, "Old Xia, let's go." Xia Wuhe nodded solemnly and said to the elders, "Focus on the big picture." Palace Master Wen Liang and Xia Wuhe flew away, turning into a stream of light as they flew in the direction they came from. All the elders in the upper echelon were heartbroken. But, as Xia Wuhe said, in front of a great enemy, everything had to be based on the overall situation. The thousands of young disciples of Mount Kunliu were the big picture. As long as they were protected, there would be hope for the sect to rise again. Swish! Xia Wuhe and Wen Liang landed on the peak of a precipitous mountain. "We will wait for them here." Wen Liang looked up and said in a deep tone. Xia Wuhe smiled lightly. "Are you nervous?" "Yeah, I'm really nervous." Wen Liang did not hide it. Just the 3 words Thunder Saint Palace was enough to make countless people in the Eastern Victory State feel fear and respect. Even so, there was no fear on Wen Liang's face. As the Devil Slaughter Palace Master, he had his own pride. The wait seemed to be extremely long at this moment, especially the mentality of waiting for death. The longer it lasted, the more uneasy it would be. However, what surprised the two of them was that the people from Thunder Saint Palace and Innocence Valley, who should have caught up to them a long time ago, didn't show up even after 5 minutes had passed. "What's going on?" Xia Wuhe frowned slightly and looked at Wen Liang. Wen Liang's face was also filled with confusion. Looking from afar, the entire Mount Kunliu was terrifyingly quiet. "Let's go back and take a look." After a short moment of hesitation, the two of them returned to the sect. The huge Mount Kunliu was empty. The sect's defensive formation had indeed been broken. However, what was puzzling was that the enemies who had been clamoring outside the mountain gate were nowhere to be seen. "Let's go down the mountain." When Liang's eyes darkened, he crossed the main peak with Xia Wuhe and arrived at the stone stairway leading to the foot of the mountain. Then, the two of them stopped abruptly, and their pupils shrank sharply. "This..." Wen Liang clenched his fists tightly. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. In front of the two of them were dozens of corpses lying in a pool of blood. The scene was too horrible to look at. Severed limbs were scattered everywhere. How could this be? Even though Wen Liang and Xia Wuhe had been in the position of palace master for many years and were used to great storms, the scene in front of them still made them tremble with fear. Among the dozens of people killed were a few elders from Thunder Saint Palace and Innocence Valley. With a glance, Xia Wuhe could tell that Wen Liang and Xia Wuhe knew quite a few of them. These people were quite famous in the entire province. But now, all of them were lying on the steps of the Mount Kunliu, sect with their eyes wide open. The sudden turn of events really caught everyone off guard. The ground was covered with corpses. It was a one-sided massacre. They didn't even disturb the people of Mount Kunliu. By the time they rushed over, the battle was already over. The entire process was silent. This could only have happened if the perpetrator's cultivation was too much higher than theirs. "It's him!" Xia Wuhe and Wen Liang looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Other than Chu Hen and Gong Yangyu, they couldn't think of anyone else. However, Gong Yangyu's personality was more gentle, and he definitely wouldn't be so ruthless. The people who were killed in front of him looked like animals that had been tortured to death. It was hard to believe that the ordinary youth who had just arrived would one day make people feel so frightened. Whoosh! At this moment, the sound of rushing wind could be heard from the foot of the mountain. Wen Liang and Wen Liang were first shocked. Then their eyelids twitched as they exclaimed in unison, "Flying Immortal Temple Master." The newcomer was none other than the Flying Immortal Temple Master, Chi Hanyu. A wave of cold air stacked up as Chi Hanyu landed in front of the two in a flash. Before she could ask about the sect situation, she was stunned by the scene in front of her. "This is..." Chi Hanyu frowned as she looked at the people who had been killed. From Wen Liang and Wen Liang's expressions, she immediately guessed what had happened. "Chu Hen's cultivation has increased again," Chi Hanyu murmured. However, this wasn't a good thing, because Chu Hen's methods of killing were becoming more and more ruthless. To Chu Hen, these people who were killed did not seem to be humans. They were like livestock that had no value at all. Killing them was killing them. She could even feel that when Chu Hen killed them, he didn't even blink. Such a person was no different from a devil. Are the others all right? Shi Hanyu took a moment to recover from her shock before replying. We've already sent them away using the teleportation passage at the back of the mountain, Xie Wuhe replied. Shi Hanyu nodded in relief. This was within her expectations, but she didn't expect Chu Hen to appear here. Although she was shocked by Chu Hen's methods of killing, at least he cared about Mount Kunliu. Why are you alone? Where's the sect master? Where is he? Wen Liang asked. Yes, Gong Yongyu is now. Before he could finish his words, a dozen or so figures were rushing over to this side. It's the flying immortal temple master and the rest. Nong Qi's voice was the first to be heard. Temple master, where's Chu Hen? Did he come here? What happened here? Lung Lingyan, Dan Zhen, Hua Shui, and the rest asked a series of questions, looking at the messy corpses on the ground, then looking at the three neatly dressed people. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. These people were killed by Chu Hen? How's he asked with a frown. In these days of searching for Chu Hen's whereabouts, they had already seen this scene countless times. The Immortal Pavilion, the imperial city of the Tiantong dynasty, and the Heavenly Cloud Manor. Based on Long Xuanchuang's understanding of Chu Hen, everyone had been speculating about Chu Hen's next move. They followed behind him without stopping, but they were always one step behind Chu Hen. Nongqi, try to sense Chu Hen's aura, Lung Lingyan said. However, Nongqi shook her head. I've been trying to sense him since the beginning, but I can't find his whereabouts. They were one step too late again. Everyone was mentally and physically exhausted. Too tired. It really made them feel like breaking down. But there was no other way. At times like this, they couldn't give up on Chu Hen. Just like Chu Hen, even though he had become the world's public enemy, he still protected the 100-nation state in Mount Kunliu. Where would Chu Hen go next? Chapter 9:31. Night fell, and darkness spread to every corner of the world. The chaos in the victorious East State continued. The successive disturbances made all the sects and factions a little numb. Even some of the onlookers who were not afraid of things getting out of hand also began to hope that this matter would end as soon as possible. No one would have thought that the little Chu Hen from back then would be able to turn the entire province upside down at this very moment. The storm was getting stronger and stronger, but there seemed to be no signs of it stopping. It was as if an even more terrifying storm was yet to come. It was close to dawn. Silence enveloped everything. Innocence Valley, beautiful and majestic. Luxurious buildings and palaces exuded a unique and mysterious aura under the slightly intoxicating light of the morning sun. Innocence Valley's terrain was precipitous, and it had unique geographical advantages. Not only was it rich in spirit qi, but it was also easy to defend and hard to attack. Many other sects and factions were very envious of this blessed land. A dozen patrolling disciples walked back and forth at the entrance of the valley from time to time. They walked with heavy footsteps, swinging the cold spears in their hands. They were sharp and cold. Meanwhile, at the peak of another mountain, shrouded in darkness, a ghostly figure stood quietly at the edge of the cliff, motionless like a boulder. No one knew when he arrived here. He just stood there. In the darkness, a pair of demonic eyes flashed with a demonic purple light. Dawn broke, and the darkness faded. Day arrived as expected. When the first ray of sunlight passed through the thick clouds and shone on the ground, everyone's vigilance was lowered. The arrival of light meant that another peaceful night had passed. However, just as the guards of Innocence Valley were yawning and stretching, a ferocious beast's roar reverberated throughout the valley. Roar! The ground shook, and then smoke rose from all directions. A huge beast appeared out of nowhere in all directions of Innocence Valley. What's going on? The people of Innocence Valley, who had just managed to relax, immediately turned pale with fright. Before they could react to what was happening, a 300-meter-long violent bear covered in thick rock armor charged into the entrance of Innocence Valley like a giant. Oh my God! It's a 5th-level heavenly beast, a heavy rock wild bear. 5th-level heavenly beast. It was a terrifying existence comparable to a human at the 5th rank of the sky profound realm. Boom! The enormous giant rock wild bear's entire body was as hard as a mountain. With a terrifying and barbaric charge, it instantly caused the defensive city gate at the entrance of the valley to collapse, causing more than half of it to collapse. Miserable and panicked cries rang out incessantly. All the disciples of Innocence Valley were crushed into minced meat under the huge claws of the giant rock wild bear. Chaos arrived with the appearance of dawn. Everyone in Wuwang Valley was startled awake. One by one, figures hurriedly flew out. "What's with all the noise? Great Elder, there's a heavenly beast attack." A flustered disciple quickly replied. "Heavenly beast attack?" The Great Elder of Honesty Valley was an old man in his 60s. His expression was dark, and his narrow, triangular eyes shone with a cold light like that of a venomous snake. "Humph! Evil creature, how dare you behave atrociously in my Innocence Valley? Are you tired of living?" As soon as he finished speaking, his figure moved, turning into a beam of light as he charged towards the giant rock wildbear that was wreaking havoc in the surroundings. "Who?" The giant rock berserk bear let out a low, muffled sound from its throat. Its ferocious aura soared into the sky as it raised its huge claws and attacked the light shadow that was attacking it. Bang! The fierce and heavy energies collided head-on, and a chaotic airwave light pattern erupted between heaven and earth. The heavy rock wild bear was directly shaken to the point of retreating more than a dozen steps, being forced back by the human before him. Instantly enraged the furious bear. The surging demonic power piled up, and the heavy rock wild bear flew into a rage, stirring up a monstrous rage and ferocity. Its huge claw turned into a fist, and it smashed down on the head of the Great Elder of Wuwang Valley again. Even though Wuwang Valley's Great Elder had reached the 6th level of the profound heaven realm, he still couldn't defeat Wuwang Valley. However, when facing an incomparably violent heavenly beast like the heavy rock wild bear, he still had to avoid its sharp edge. His body flashed backwards, and the berserk bear smashed fiercely into the ground. The ground instantly split open, and rocks crumbled and stacked together. A huge pit appeared on the ground. "This beast's brute strength is too strong. Set up a formation to trap it," another senior elder shouted. "Yes." Immediately, more than a dozen swift and fierce figures rushed towards the heavy rock wild bear from different directions. Then, they threw out thick and heavy chains to wrap around the beast's limbs and neck. It was an extremely shocking scene, like a demon being trapped. However, right after that, a mountain peak in the west of Wuwang Valley was flipped open again. Amidst the chaotic rain of rubble, another huge creature actually crawled out from the ground. This huge creature was also 100 meters long, and it looked like a beetle. It carried a heavy snail shell on its back, and its head was very ferocious. Its huge beak was like a blooming, man-eating flower. Oh no, another heavenly beast. This is a level 4 heavenly beast, the Earth Ghost King. Screech! Before they could recover from the shock, a vast and surging airwave swept up in the southern sky once again. The sound of thunder rumbled, and a huge black shadow covered the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. A black feathered eagle with a wingspan of nearly 1,000 meters and 3 heads glided across the sky, breaking through the wind to attack. What? This is a black cloud eagle. Damn it, this is a level 6 heavenly beast. A trembling voice came from the mouth of one of Wuwang Valley's disciples. Roar! Screech! Then, something even more shocking happened. One after another, ferocious demonic beasts crawled out of Wuwang Valley, toppling mountains and toppling forests. There was a giant tiger with wings on its back, a snow leopard with lightning circling around its body, and a bloodthirsty giant spider with a ferocious face. In an instant, hundreds of terrifying demonic beasts charged into Wuwang Valley. Without the slightest bit of mercy, they began a frenzied massacre of the crowd. Swish, 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 swish. Then small mounds rose from the ground, and densely packed red fire ants crawled out. They rushed forward and bit the crowd. Ah! The crowd screamed in agony and panic. Accompanied by a buzzing noise, the swarm of bloodblade mantises swarmed over like a swarm of locusts. A harvest feast was quietly underway. Damn it. The Grand Elder of Wuwang Valley was both shocked and angry, and he was extremely anxious. Such a huge group of beasts was simply a disaster. Just a few terrifying heavenly beasts were already difficult enough to resist, let alone the hundreds of beast emperors and the swarm of fire ants and bloodblade mantises that took advantage of the chaos to attack. This wasn't a beast attack at all. Someone had purposely summoned them here. Roar! The heavy rock wild bear erupted with a majestic aura. It swung its body fiercely, and the chains wrapped around its body spun rapidly like iron whips, lashing out at the crowd around it. Everyone who was hit by the high-speed, spinning chains exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Screech! The black cloud eagle flew like a bolt of lightning, like a shooting star. It transformed into a broad shadow blade and fell from the sky. A mountain ridge was split in half, and a huge ravine appeared on the ground. Countless people in Wuwang Valley died on the spot, as if they were hit by a divine blade that could tear through the air. Their limbs flew everywhere. There was no doubt that Wuwang Valley was defenseless. The massacre quickly turned into a one-sided situation. Bastards! The Grand Elder of Wuwang Valley's eyes turned cold. After scanning the surroundings, his gaze finally fell on a steep cliff. At the edge of the cliff, a young figure quietly watched the merciless massacre in front of him. Chapter 9:32. It really is you, you damn little bastard. You still dare to come here? I'll make sure you won't be able to leave today. The Grand Elder of Wuwang Valley immediately discovered Chu Hen, who was calmly watching the merciless slaughter in front of him, on top of a precipice of a mountain range. Calmly looking at the bloody massacre, Chu Hen commanded the beasts, as if he was the king of the world. When a king was angry, blood flowed like rivers, and corpses littered the ground. The tens of thousands of people in the Valley of Innocence were like ants. New grudges and old grudges. Since it had reached a point where it couldn't be resolved, then he would slaughter his entire clan. Bastard, why aren't you stopping? In his rage, the first elder unleashed a monstrous killing aura and charged at Chu Hen. His powerful aura pressed down like a mountain. His hands moved like willows, and a shocking amount of true essence spun back and forth between his palms and arms. Buzz, a violent wind blew, and the world shook. The space where Chu Hen was instantly swept up with a rapidly rotating spiral airflow. The extremely tearing force of the spiral airflow was like tens of thousands of flying swords. The mountain peaks and stone walls under Chu Hen's feet were instantly crushed into pieces. Rolling stones and thunder rumbled, and Chu Hen felt as if he had fallen into the eye of a storm. Ignorant thing. Don't think that just because you use these beasts to destroy the heavenly empire, you have the right to behave atrociously in the Valley of Innocence. The first elder swung his arms, and the spiral current around Chu Hen became even more terrifying and powerful. The area of the storm rapidly shrank, and the space around Chu Hen shrank as well. Shatter! The first elder roared. Humph! As soon as the first elder finished speaking, Chu Hen's eyes widened, and a shocking, majestic sword aura suddenly burst out. Whoosh! After that, it immediately transformed into a sharp human-shaped sword chi that vanished on the spot. Its momentum was like a shocking rainbow, and it was swift like a bolt of lightning as it forcefully broke open a chasm in the incomparably violent, spiraling airflow. Bang! Waves of energy flew everywhere, and the sword aura wreaked havoc. A vast and mighty flow of true essence was like an exploding nebula, blotting out the heavens and covering the earth as it surged and splashed in all directions. What? The head elder's pupils shrank to the size of a needle. He stared wide-eyed at the human-shaped sword aura that resembled a shadow blade charging at him. Bang! The powerful sword chi struck the man's body, and the flesh on his chest split open. A wound so deep that his bones could be seen appeared, and it reached his internal organs. It stretched from his right shoulder to his left rib, blood splattered everywhere, and the great elder of Innocence Valley let out a miserable cry. He covered his wound with one hand as he quickly retreated. "Protect great elder! Hurry up!" A few experts from Innocence Valley panicked and hurriedly flew up to block Chu Hen's path. The dignified grand elder couldn't even withstand a single strike of my sword. Oomph! How laughable! Chu Hen stood in the air, the tip of his sword pointed at him. The expressions of everyone in Wuwang Valley changed again and again. They were both shocked and angry. Wah! At this moment, a majestic aura filled the sky. "Insolent thief, don't be so arrogant here." His thunderous voice shook the heavens, and everyone's eyes lit up. "Valley Master!" Roar! Roar! Sensing the powerful aura released by the newcomer, the many demonic beasts in the valley roared at the sky, emitting roars that resounded through the sky. Who else could it be but the leader of Wuwang Valley, Shinachangkong? "You bastard, you killed my son, Tiani. Today, I will make you suffer in this world to vent my hatred." Shinachangkong's deep voice rang out from different directions. Illusory sky realm. Buzz, buzz. In an instant, an endless curtain of darkness spilled towards the area where Chu Hen was. The 9 heavens dimmed, and the earth lost its color. It was as if he had fallen into an endless abyss of darkness. Everyone in Wuwang Valley, as well as all the demons, disappeared from sight. It was as if Chu Hen had arrived in another world of nothingness. "An illusion, huh?" Chu Hen muttered to himself. "Your arrogance has impressed me," Shinachangkong said. Buzz! Layer after layer of ripples appeared in the air. Just as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man dressed in luxurious clothes appeared a few meters behind Chu Hen. Then the figure split into 2, 2 into 4, and 4 into 8. In the blink of an eye, dozens of identical figures appeared in all directions around Chu Hen. Not a bad bloodline boundary power. Chu Hen's face was calm as he stood where he was. He said faintly, "It's a pity. I stole someone else's illusory sky mystic body." It was one of the top bloodline boundaries in the mystic body. It was a combination of illusion and martial arts, complementing each other. It could be said to be ever-changing, making it hard to distinguish between real and fake. However, everyone knew that Wuwang Valley's Shina family clan possessed the wedding dress mystic body. This body did not have a strong increase in strength, but its greatest ability was to snatch other people's bloodline boundaries for one's own use. Back then, Shinachangkong had obtained this illusory sky mystic body, which allowed him to rule over an area and make Wuwang Valley stronger. As for Shintui Tian, who had been killed by Chu Hen in the Xian Kshetra sky region, his ambition was even greater. What he wanted was Yi Yao's evolved Tai Chi holy body. "I have to say, you father and son really make me hate you," Chu Hen said in a light voice. "Oomph, you're about to die, yet you still dare to boast here. Next, I'll let you know what despair is." Whoosh. Just as he finished speaking, a thick aura of death attacked Chu Hen. Dozens of Shinachangkongs burst out with a mountainous aura at the same time. Each of them flipped their palms and attacked Chu Hen. In the dark space, shadows flashed and quintessential essence stacked up. A surging power that could topple mountains and overturn seas was unleashed. There was a kind of transcendent aura that seemed like it wanted to kill Chu Hen in one strike. Chu Hen did not move at all. He did not even move his feet in the face of the dozens of powerful figures that were attacking him fiercely. His indifferent and deep voice was filled with mockery and disdain. "Unfortunately, the bloodline physique you stole is useless against me." Useless, boom. In an instant, an invisible spatial fluctuation spread out in all directions with Chu Hen at the center. In the next second, the dozens of powerful figures that were charging from all directions suddenly disappeared without a trace. In the area in front of Chu Hen, only Shinachangkong was left. He was shocked as if he had seen the most terrifying scene in the world. In the dark space. It was as if he had fallen into a nightmare. What appeared in front of Shinachangkong was a pair of purple eyes that were flickering in the darkness, shock, fear, and disbelief. At this moment, The person who dominated the darkness was no longer Shinta. In an instant, he had fallen into an ice cellar. Chu Hen's figure seemed to have become hard to surpass. Other than his demon-like, demonic, and charming eyes, there was also a layer of strange black shadow floating behind him. The shadow stuck closely to Chu Hen's back, emitting a mysterious and dangerous aura. Despair. It was indeed despair. However, the person who was in despair was not Chu Hen. You're a demon. Shinta Chankong's voice was trembling. Buzz. Chapter 9:33. Bang! Endless violent turbulence instantly erupted like a torrent. The dark space that shrouded the sky was forcibly torn apart by the violent and devastating purple flames. The purple flame was like a blossoming flower, rising and surging into the sky. Everyone in Wuong Valley frowned as they stared fixedly at the sky. The darkness receded, and the purple flames filled the sky. When everyone saw the figure that stood proudly beneath the sky like a young king, all of their eyes instantly opened wide, and they were extremely astounded. He's still alive. How is this possible? Where's the Valley Master? Did he lose? Amidst the disbelieving and panicked gazes, a figure wrapped in purple flames slid out of the sea of flames. No, it's impossible, absolutely impossible. The great elder's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It was as if he had just witnessed the most terrifying thing in the world. The other people in Innocence Valley were equally shocked. Their hearts trembled, and they felt as if even their souls were trembling. Could that person be the Valley Master, Shinta Chankong? The answer was obvious. There were only two people in that dark space earlier. One was Chu Hen, and the other was Shinta Chankong. Now, Chu Hen had appeared before everyone's eyes unscathed. As such, there was no need to guess who the other person was. Valley Master. A few senior elders of Innocence Valley stepped into the sky one after another, trying to rescue him. But it was too late. The aura of the figure shrouded in the demonic flames was almost completely gone. Buzz. Without much struggle, the purple flames became extremely domineering. The figure became smaller and smaller, and in the blink of an eye, it was burned to ashes. The Valley Master of Innocence Valley, Shinta Chankong, was dead. Boom! In an instant, everyone in Wuong Valley felt their vision darken. It was as if the sky had fallen down on them. The dust settled, and dark clouds filled the sky. The last line of defense collapsed quietly. What followed was only the merciless slaughter of the demon beasts. Roar! Screech! The unstoppable demonic beast was comparable to a sword of the Grim Reaper that went straight for the vital points. It trampled the mountain peaks and rushed into the crowd, biting and slamming madly. The sixth-level heavenly beast, Black Cloud Condor, was known for its astonishing might, transforming into the sky's splitting shadow wings. Wherever it went, everything was sliced into pieces. The rank 5 Beast Emperor, the heavy rock wild bear, was even more violent. Wherever its huge claws trampled, everything was razed to the ground and turned into ruins. One by one, Honesty Valley's disciples fell to the beast's sharp teeth and claws. The roars of the demon beasts and the shrill screams interweaved into a magnificent piece of music. It's over. Wuong Valley's great elder's face was drained of blood. His eyelids drooped, and his face was ashen. Thousands of years of foundation was destroyed in a day. Compared to the recent upheaval of the Heaven Unified Empire, Wuong Valley was truly uprooted and massacred. It's all over. The great elder lifted his head helplessly and looked at the figure hovering in the air. Everything he had was thanks to this person. He had thought that he had angered Wuong Valley by killing Shinto Etienne. However, he had never expected that Shinto Etienne would provoke him and bring about the destruction of Wuong Valley. The moment Shinta Chankong was burned to ashes, Wuong Valley was completely finished. Roar! A sword tiger and a winged lion pounced on the great elder of Wuong Valley. They opened their mouths, which reeked of blood, at the same time. A short, hurried scream rang out, and the old man's body was immediately torn to pieces. The massacre continued. Everyone scattered and fled. Dazzling red spread to every corner of Wuong Valley. After an unknown amount of time, the chaotic Wuong Valley finally returned to peace. However, it was a completely different scene. Corpses littered the ground, and blood flowed like a river. It was originally a blessed land that was filled with spiritual energy. However, in less than a morning, it had been reduced to an incomparably tragic Azura hell. Broken bones and corpses could be seen everywhere. The demonic beasts circled and crouched in the valley, whimpering softly. It was as if they were announcing their victory, but also as if they were singing a dirge. It was a true bloodbath. They had completely killed everyone. In comparison, the Heaven Dynasty had only flattened the imperial city. There were still many vassals and ministers, but they had become a third or fourth-rate power. As for Wuong Valley, it didn't even have a chance to make a comeback. From now on, there would be no more Wuong Valley in the victorious Dongsheng Prefecture. One of the top 10 powers would be gone once again. The cold wind that blew in their faces carried a hint of blood. Chu Hin looked down at the ground in front of him, looking down on everything. His aura was cold and sinister, making him feel like a frosty blade. It was cold and frightening. Enough is enough. At that moment, a strange power surged out of his body. The sacred winged heavenly flame bird's low voice was filled with helplessness and apology. Since leaving the ancient desolate heaven region, this was the first time it had communicated with Chu Hin. This storm of slaughter was endless. There were more than 1 million people who had died at Chu Hin's hands. Even though the sacred winged heavenly flame bird knew that Chu Hin was in great pain after losing Luo Mengchong, it knew that if this continued, it would eventually destroy him. Chu Hin looked up and replied indifferently, "I can't stop it anymore. I'm very sorry about her." The sacred winged heavenly flame bird sighed. When it had collected the Xian Xia divine lightning heart, it hadn't sensed Lei Mingho hiding in the dark. If it had discovered Lei Mingho before that, it might have been able to avoid the tragedy. In the sacred winged heavenly flame bird's opinion, this was its mistake. Chu Hin didn't say anything. He just looked ahead quietly. "Let go." The sacred winged heavenly flame bird advised again. "The killing power in your body is almost unable to suppress even the bloodline power of your demonic pupil sacred body." It didn't continue. Over 1 million people were killed. Qi Tian's command. Heretic God's power. The more he killed, the stronger the heretic God's power would be. However, the price he had to pay was the endless expansion of his inner demon. Once he was controlled by the inner demon, he would become a slave of the heretic God and never be able to turn back. "Thank you." A faint ripple appeared in Chu Hin's eyes. At this time, he was still able to hear some words of concern. It touched his heart a little. However, it was only a little. "I can't turn back anymore." It was meaningful. It was extremely resolute. Chu Hin raised his head. His eyes were filled with many emotions as he looked into the sky. Screech, high up in the sky, a falcon pierced through the clouds. Chu Hin's gaze pierced through the layers of white clouds and reached the vast blue sky. It was as if there was a giant that stood at the top of the pyramid of the Eastern Victory State. "You're the only one left in the Thunder Saint Palace. I, Chu Hin, am coming." Chapter 9:34. This is bad, this is bad. Innocence Valley was massacred. The entire sect was massacred without exception. The culprit has been confirmed to be Chu Hin. After Heaven's Unity Dynasty, another top 10 faction has fallen. A loud voice spread from one end of the street to the other. The tea houses, restaurants, and stalls on both sides of the street poked their heads out, their faces filled with shock. Innocence Valley had been annihilated. This piece of news was shocking, but it seemed reasonable as well. However, what made people shudder was the ice-cold words "slaughtered to the last man" and "bloodbath" that pierced the eardrums of everyone present. Top 10 factions. They were existences that stood at the top of the pyramid in the Victory Dong Prefecture. But in just over a month, 2 of them have been wiped out for the first time. The people of the various factions in the prefecture felt that they were so weak and unable to withstand a single blow. Massacre after massacre, the moment he attacked, he slaughtered entire sects. The people's initial mentality of watching a good show gradually turned into fear and unease. Chu Hen's appearance had brought a huge disaster to the Victory Dawn Prefecture. Even top factions like Heaven's Unity Dynasty and Innocence Valley had been destroyed with a flip of his hand. What difference was there between the other ordinary sects and clans and ants in Chu Hen's eyes? Tai Ching sect. The atmosphere in the conference hall was very heavy. The faces of the upper echelons still had a trace of fear that had yet to completely fade. Sect Master Luo Songsong, who was sitting on the wide chair that represented the highest authority, seemed to be somewhat restless. Luo Songsong was not very old. He looked to be in his 40s. While he was shocked, Luo Songsong was also secretly rejoicing. It seemed that withdrawing the order to kill Chu Hen was a very wise choice. Otherwise, it would have been his Tai Ching sect that had been massacred. Do you guys think that Chu Hen's next target will be our Tai Ching sect? A deep and fearful voice came from the mouth of one of the elders. The voice was not loud, but it made the hearts of everyone in the hall tighten. Luo Songsong's frown, which had yet to relax, immediately deepened. I don't think so, another elder replied. His tone was clearly lacking in confidence. We've already revoked the order to hunt him down. We won't pursue the matter of him killing Elder Li Xiao and many of our disciples. What else does he want? What else do you want? Many people shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Now, it was not that they wanted to do anything to Chu Hen, but what Chu Hen would do to them next back then, he was just a nobody, but now he had the power to challenge a top sect alone. To say that the Tai Ching sect was not panicking, absolutely no one would believe it. But then again, Chu Hen's fate was already decided, because there was still the Thunder Saint Palace. No matter how powerful Chu Hen was in the eyes of the world, it was impossible for him to defeat the colossus that was the Thunder Saint Palace. The Great Clear sect was afraid that before the Thunder Saint Palace could kill Chu Hen, they would follow in the footsteps of the Heaven Imperial Dynasty, and without Wang Valley. Immediately recall all the disciples who went out, seal off the sect, and defend with all our might. After a long period of silence, Luo Songsong finally gave this order. All the elders nodded. In the current situation, it seemed that biding their time was the wisest choice. At this moment, they could only hope that Chu Hen would be killed by the Thunder Saint Palace before attacking the Great Clear sect. The stars are dim. The prefecture will fall into chaos. A towering mountain stood at the peak of all the mountains, like a divine blade that could shake the heavens. At the top of the mountain, under an ancient pine tree, an old man wearing a long white robe raised his head to look at the stars in the night sky. The old man had silver hair and a white beard, and he had the air of an otherworldly immortal. His eyes were cloudy, and his entire body gave off the extraordinary aura of an otherworldly master. Everything in the world served as a foil to him. Under the millions of stars, he was like a bright moon that descended to the world. This was a temperament that had existed since time immemorial. He retracted his gaze and sighed softly. The prefecture will fall into chaos. What should my Thousand Worlds sect do? The old man muttered to himself. On the other side of the prefecture, neon lights flashed and brilliant lights overflowed. Luxurious and resplendent palaces were built on the towering peaks of the mountains. At the top of the mountain, above the palace, a huge stone stood erect like a sword. On the stone tablet, there were 3 words, Jihua Palace. The strokes were bold and vigorous, and the strokes were unparalleled. Is the palace master inside? I have something to report. Outside the dazzling palace, a figure hurriedly stepped on the steps outside the door. A few guards with extraordinary bearings stopped him and replied in an unquestionable tone. The palace master is in closed-door cultivation. The temple master is currently in closed-door cultivation. All matters will be handled by the elders group of the North Flower Palace. I believe you know this, right? The guard replied in a deep voice. The situation is urgent. I must ask the palace master, the person insisted. Oh, the guard was slightly surprised. If it was under normal circumstances, no one would dare to disturb the palace master at this time. However, when he saw the other person's solemn expression, he immediately asked in confusion, "What's so urgent?" Could it be that the victorious East State has been turned upside down? It has indeed been turned upside down. After the Heaven Dynasty, the entire Innocence Valley was slaughtered. 2 of the top 10 forces have already been eliminated. The blood of more than 1 million people has been stained by Chu-Hen alone. A slight ripple appeared in the darkness. Inside the palace, under the dim light, a figure sitting on a stone throne suddenly opened his eyes. The sharp light in his eyes revealed his supreme majesty. If the destruction of the heavenly imperial dynasty was just a coincidence, then the fall of Wuwang Valley was a direct declaration of disaster. The destruction of 2 first-rate forces set off a huge chain reaction in the prefecture. The Thousand Worlds sect and the Jiuhua Palace were both alarmed. Meanwhile, the Taiching sect, Wind and Cloud Pavilion, Sky Bamboo Peak, and other sects also recalled their disciples and completely sealed their sections. This was unprecedented. The storm set off by Chu-Hen had already swept through the entire prefecture. In particular, the clans and forces that had sent people to hunt down Chu-Hen all over the place acted as if they were facing a great enemy. All of them hid in their homes, not daring to come out. For a moment, the undercurrents in the victorious East State were surging. Various passers-by were also secretly searching for traces of Chu-Hen, but no one dared to be too loud. After the complete disappearance of the Innocence Valley, who would be next? In an instant, everyone's attention shifted to another powerful force, the Thunder Saint Palace. Perhaps the most terrifying storm was about to arrive. Chapter 9:35. The storm that engulfed the victorious East Prefecture grew more and more violent. In less than 2 months after the ancient desolate Heaven Domain ended, more than 1 million people died in Chu-Hen's hands. 2 of the top 10 factions in the prefecture perished. However, all of these turbulences seemed to be merely the prelude to an even more terrifying hurricane that was about to arrive. From flattening the imperial capital of the Heaven United Dynasty to bathing the valley in blood, it seemed more like a provocation to the supreme dignity. Thunder Saint Palace, one of the 3 major factions in the prefecture. In the vast victorious East Prefecture, only the Thousand Worlds sect and the Palace of Jiuhua could be mentioned in the same breath. To any sect or faction in the prefecture, the 3 major factions were colossal existences for thousands of years. No one in the prefecture could shake their position. Today, Chu-Hen, who was being hunted by all the major sects, wiped out his enemies one by one with lightning speed. Finally, only the Thunder Saint Palace was left. Provocation? Demonstration? Or perhaps it was just pure hatred. Chu-Hen used this cruel and merciless method to complete his revenge on all the major factions. The blood of 1 million people was not enough to send off a beauty. At this point, whether it was Chu-Hen or the Thunder Saint Palace, there was no turning back. They wouldn't rest until they were dead. The beautiful mountains and rivers stood tall in the dense spirit fog. The mountain ridges were like ancient dragons crawling on the ground. Faint golden clouds floated among the mountains. The mountains and rivers were the same color, and the white cranes and colorful clouds reflected off each other. Even in the entire eastern continent, such an abundant spirit vein was a precious land that was rarely seen. In this paradise of beautiful mountains and pleasant scenery, there were many magnificent palaces and palaces built one after another. Some buildings towered into the clouds, like the star-plucking pavilion. At the top of the mountain, there was a square platform. It was majestic, like the legendary emperor's coronation platform. Even from afar, this mountain gate gave off an untouchable feeling of grandeur. Even standing at the foot of the mountain, one couldn't help but feel humble. Thunder Saint Palace, the symbol of nobility. The martial arts palace that countless young people yearned to enter. The normally heavily guarded Thunder Saint Palace had actually opened its doors. Hundreds of disciples lined up on both sides of the main peak of the Thunder Saint Palace. The disciples continued to spread out on both sides of the mountain ridge. If one were to look down from the sky, it would look like a huge 8. The center was facing the mountain gate, and it was completely open. There wasn't the slightest bit of precaution. It was as if the door was open and the other party was free to enter. "What's going on?" What was the meaning of this Thunder Saint Palace? Are you trying to lure me into a trap? A few furtive figures were hiding in the darkness outside the mountain gate in the distance. After the massacre in Wuwang Valley, everyone's attention was focused on the Thunder Saint Palace. Although this storm was getting more and more intense, it was still inevitable that some busybodies would suspect and spy on it. It's obvious that they're trying to lure him into a trap. The Thunder Saint Palace is clearly announcing to the world that they don't care about a mere Chu Hen. If he has the ability, he can come. I'll just open the door and wait. This is also in line with the Thunder Saint Palace's high and mighty style of doing things. Some people inwardly nodded, as expected of the Thunder Saint Palace. First, the Heaven Unified Dynasty was destroyed, then the Innocence Valley was destroyed. Chu Hen's imposing manner could be said to be like the sun in the sky. But now, the Thunder Saint Palace had put on "I'm just afraid you won't come" attitude, which could be considered as a blow to Chu Hen's spirit. In the end, the Thunder Saint Palace didn't really care about Chu Hen at all. But will Chu Hen come? The Thunder Saint Palace is not something that Innocence Valley can compare to. Let's not talk about the tens of thousands of elite disciples. Just the number of experts at the Sky Profound Realm alone is more than 30. Just this alone is enough to consign Chu Hen to eternal damnation. That's right. Although Chu Hen has the ability to summon demonic beasts, even if he gathers all the powerful demonic beasts in the entire victorious Dongxing province, he still won't be able to fight against the Thunder Saint Palace. All the demonic beasts? Don't be ridiculous. The revolving beast diagram has a limit. At most, one can only summon 1,000 demonic beasts. Moreover, the spatial distance is also a problem. With just a summoning treasure, he won't be a match for the Thunder Saint Palace. Moreover, even if Chu Hen really has the ability to summon 1,000 powerful demonic beasts, don't forget how terrifying that person is. That person. Hearing these two words, the noisy discussion immediately fell into a deathly silence. After a long time, a voice full of fear and respect was spat out. That person is truly a transcendent existence that has eternal life and is indestructible for 1,000 generations. In reality, not a single person believed that Chu Hen had the ability or capital to fight against the Thunder Saint Palace. The reason why some people gathered here was purely to see if Chu Hen had the guts to openly come to the Thunder Saint Palace. In the blink of an eye, a day passed. The inside and outside of the Thunder Saint Palace was still as calm as before. The sect gate was still wide open, and the nearly 1,000 disciples that were spread out on the east and west side of the mountain were like statues, standing still in their original spots, emitting a cold and sharp aura. Chu Hen still hasn't appeared? Could it be that he doesn't dare to come? There doesn't seem to be any news from the other sects either. The wait was long, especially with the current situation. The young man called Chu Hen's every move had the magical power to tug at people's heartstrings. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Early in the morning, a thin mist rose from the mountains. When a morning wind blew, it carried a penetrating chill. I must be king crazy to think that Chu Hen would dare to come to the Thunder Saint Palace. I really overestimated him. I reckon that Chu Hen has already escaped the victorious East Province. I think so too. Let's go back. Let's go. I believe that in a few days, we will hear the news of the 100 Kingdoms Province and Mount Kunli being massacred. Just as the busybodies hiding outside the Thunder Saint Palace were preparing to leave, a strange soft sound suddenly rang out from the mountain forest. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. This sound was not loud and could be said to be extremely soft. However, there was an indescribable sense of steadiness to it. It was long and heavy, like the sound of a sharp metal object being dragged on a rock. Look over there. What? Countless gazes filled with disbelief all looked towards the foot of the main peak of the Thunder Saint Palace. There, a stairway connected to the top of the mountain like a winding dragon lying on the ground. The stairway connected the foot of the mountain directly to the top of the mountain. And on the long stairway, a slightly thin and slender figure was walking up the stone steps step by step. That young and handsome figure was dressed in black, holding a dragon's pine divine spear in his hand. The long spear was held diagonally behind his back, and the tip of the spear touched the ground as it was slowly dragged along the stone steps. As the tip of the spear was dragged along the stone steps, it gave off a sonorous and heavy sound. Faint sparks flew, and a deep mark was continuously being dragged along, one step at a time, and with every step he took, it was as if he had walked through an era. That proud and aloof figure brought an indescribable impact and shock to everyone.